Hello everybody, I am back from Paris, recharged, refreshed and ready to punch December very hard in the dick and hopefully end the year with a solid profit. I've been working really hard researching plenty of the upcoming fights to give us the best chance of making money in December, and this video today will probably be the deepest, the longest, one of the most detailed betting analysis videos that I have ever done on YouTube. We are going to be taking a deep dive into pretty much this entire UFC on ESPN 7 card, because today I will be focusing on 9 fights taking place this weekend, including the main event between Overeem and Rozenstruik. So if you're thinking of placing any bets on the fights this weekend, please watch the whole video because we are going to be going deep on all of these matchups. But before we get into that, I want to let you guys know that I'm going to be launching a very exciting new feature on my website tomorrow, which will be Friday the 6th of December. Now, these long breaks in the UFC schedule are great because they give me an opportunity to update the website, improve the website, go back through my past results and analyze where I'm going wrong, what I'm doing well, what I need to tweak, what I need to improve. And they also enable me to kind of have some downtime to think about new features and new things that I can do to bring more value to you guys. I'm always looking for ways to bring more value to my viewers, and many of you watching are paying members of my website, and I'm always conscious that you are giving me your hard-earned cash every month and I want to repay you. So last month, I kind of experimented with a new type of content that I wasn't sure people were going to like, because to be honest with you, the type of content that I was pumping out was real rough. So if you've been subscribed to my Twitch channel, you'll know that over sort of like the last month or 6 weeks, I've been doing live research sessions for promotions outside of the UFC, because obviously it's difficult to do live research videos for UFC fights because all of the UFC content is copyrighted, but it becomes a little bit easier to do it for promotions like Bellator, PFL, KSW, where the majority of past footage is kind of available online on YouTube for anyone to watch. So here we can see on Twitch, we had a 2 hour and 47 minute research session on Bellator 234, 55-minute one here on Bellator 233, an hour and 22 minutes here, 2 hours here on just one fight between Leslie Smith and Arlene Blencowe that we did actually end up betting and making decent money on. We took a small gamble on Blencowe and she came through for us. But I wasn't sure if people would like this type of content because it's very rough. It's not planned. You guys know me. I always heavily plan out my videos. There you can see my notes there just for one of the fights that we're going to be talking about today. But because these live research videos are literally me just sat at my computer showing you the way I work, showing you, the kind of things I look for, showing you my process, I thought it might be a little bit too rough, a little bit too long form, a little bit too long-winded. Wasn't sure if anyone would like it, but it turns out you guys do like it. But the problem that I've been having, when I've been doing these live streams on Twitch, is that I've found as we're going through the fights, because liquidity and the max bet limits on these smaller promotions outside of the UFC are very low, while I've been kind of researching these fights and talking through these fights, I've seen the odds, move in front of my eyes based on the stuff that I'm saying in these live streams as people watching the stream go out and place bets on these fights, which is perfectly natural, right? So this week I got back from Paris and, looked ahead to all the fights taking place this weekend, and I was pleased to see that we've got a really big KSW event taking place on Saturday. Scott Askham against Khalidov. And I really wanted to do a live research video on Twitch for this event, but the problem that I've got is liquidity on KSW tends to be very low. With literally just 500 to £1,000, you could destroy the odds on, pretty much any of the fights taking place on this card. So if I were to live research, or if I were to live stream my research for this on Twitch, and I would find a bet, by the time the live stream was over and I would send the bet out to my members, the odds would be completely destroyed. So kind of ran into a problem where people are liking this content, but unfortunately liquidity is too low for the masses to be able to consume the content because the liquidity just isn't there to support the bets, right? The max bet limits aren't there. If a lot of people place bets, the odds are going to get destroyed. So while I was away in Paris thinking of a solution, And I did come up with a very cool idea where from now on, from tomorrow, I will be live streaming my research for as many promotions outside of the UFC as I can. So that includes ONE FC, PFL, KSW, Dana White's Contender Series fights, Combate. As many of these promotions as I can get through, I will be live streaming my research for those promotions on my website. And if you are one of my VIP or elite members, keep an eye on your inbox in the next 24 hours, because I will be sending you an email with details of how to watch my live research session tomorrow night for KSW 52. We'll be taking a very deep dive into this event live together. It'll be very interactive, and hopefully we'll be able to dig up some decent quality bets. So that is going to be a soft launch, and then obviously, throughout December is very exciting because we have 3 Bellator events in December, 1 PFL event and 1 Rising event as well, on top of 3 UFCs and 1 KSW. So plenty of opportunities to do these live research sessions on the site, and I'm looking forward to taking a deep dive into these fights with you guys, and hopefully, by working together on the live streams, we can find some decent bets and make some decent money. And the reason again why I want to do that is just because many of you watching me give me your cold hard-earned cash every month, and I don't think it's fair that I put these live streams out on Twitch, and then before I get a chance to send you guys the bets, other people watching the stream have completely destroyed the odds. I think when we started researching the Blenko fight, she was around about 2.30, and then by the time the stream had ended, she'd been bet down to 2.10. Not a big difference, but at the same time, it could have been a lot worse. That could be the difference between pulling the trigger and not pulling the trigger. So that is the plan moving forward, so that from now on, at least if the odds do move during a live stream, it will be, people supporting me that benefit from that information. So that is all I wanted to talk about before we take a deep dive into these 9 fights. Thank you for listening to me rabbiting on, and please hit the like button if you like this video, and also please subscribe if you haven't already. And I want to remind you guys, I read every single one of your comments, even though I don't always have time to respond. So we will be talking about a lot of stuff in this video. We'll be going into some really deep shit on these fights, and I want to know in the comments if you agree with me or not, or if you think I've missed anything out. Please let me know. And because I will be focusing on much more fights in this video than usual, I do apologise, but I probably will have to take this a little bit slower and refer to my notes a little bit more often than I usually do, just because it has been a couple of weeks now since I researched some of these fights and wrote down my notes. So just want to make sure I don't miss anything off, and I take my time, and I don't miss any important details. So the first fight that we are going to jump into on this card is a fight that a lot of people are interested in. So I thought we'd kick this video off strong and discuss the matchup between Cody Stamann and Song, or Yadong Song. I've sometimes seen it flip the other way and called Song Yadong, but either way, yes, this guy is a Terminator. He is an absolute beast. Very, very, very impressive. But unfortunately, to some extent, how good Song has looked in the UFC so far is baked into his odds, because if we look at the current odds at the moment, the best you can currently get him at is around about 1.53, which is minus 189 for an implied probability of 65%. So to get any value on Song here, you'd want to be capping him, you want to be giving him about a 70% chance of winning, and in order to assign a fighter a probability of in the 70% ballpark of winning, they really have to tick pretty much every box. So that is what we will be looking at in this video. If Song Yadong, or Yadong Song, let's just call him Song, if Song does tick every box, or if there are some red flags that may potentially make this a difficult fight for him, and maybe may lead you towards, maybe rolling the dice on Stamann or passing altogether. And if we look at the odds on Stamann, he is currently around about an average of 2.65, which is plus 165 for an implied probability of 38%. So the bookies are seeing this as about a 65-40 fight in favour of Song. So to get any value on Stamann here, you'd want to be giving him around about a 45% chance of winning, which might be tricky because, like I say, Song is an absolute nightmare. So let's really get into this one, because I've seen a lot of people with action on this fight. A lot of people have been betting this fight, and I've seen a lot of people that have actually been betting Song Yadong. See, it's Song Yadong here, and it's Yadong Song on Tapology. Which way round is it? It's very confusing. Song Yadong, Yadong Song. I don't know. Let's just call him Song. Anyway, this is a difficult fight to cap, guys. And the odds are a little bit strange on this one, because I've seen a lot of people online betting Song Yadong. I've seen not many people betting Cody Stamann, but the odds don't really reflect that action, because if we look at the chart here, which shows the line movement on this fight, we can see that, obviously the opening line doesn't mean anything. It almost always gets hammered, but as soon as Song was opened up at 1.70, he got bet down to around, the 1.50 territory, and then it's pretty much stayed around that number for the last 2 weeks. So a lot of people seem to be betting Song, but that isn't reflected in the line movement, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Are we going to see a lot of late money on Song come in and he'll close at around 1.40, which would be minus 250, or are people actually seeing value on Stamann? Very difficult to say, but the odds movement doesn't really reflect the public opinion on this matchup, which I find quite interesting. So maybe there are a lot of people who know what they're talking about betting on this fight, and maybe they've really done their research on Song and found some of the same issues that I found when researching this fight, because this is a difficult matchup to cap, because we haven't really seen any of Song's takedown defense. If we look at his fights in the UFC, this will be his 5th fight in the UFC, but all the guys that he's fought have been, strikers. Barrett Kandare, he's just not a strong grappler. Felipe Arantes, obviously a kickboxer, Muay Thai fighter. Vince Morales, predominantly a boxer, and of course Alejandro Perez, predominantly a boxer. So very disappointing how, Song has been in the UFC since 2017, and we really haven't seen his takedown defense or ground game tested at all. In order to try and gauge how Song's takedown defense and ground game looks, we've actually got to go all the way back to his fight against Edgar Scrivers way back in 2017, which is really unfortunate, because as we can see, Song is a young guy. He's only 22 years old. So back when that fight against Scrivers took place, he only would have been like 19, 20 years old. And of course, fighters can make massive improvements at the early stages in their career. So, the takedown defense and ground game that he demonstrated in this matchup might be completely irrelevant in 2019, 2 years later. But what I can tell you about that fight is that Yadong Song's takedown defense and ground game wasn't great. And we're going to watch that fight together, and I'm going to show you what I mean. But before we do get into that, I just have to make it clear that even though we haven't seen Song's takedown defense and ground game tested at all in his 5 fights in the UFC, or 4 fights in the UFC, everything is kind of pointing towards Song now having pretty good takedown defense and a ground game. Because if we look at his body type, if you've watched Song fight, he's got a very compact, short, explosive, athletic, powerful body type. The exact type of body type you see from the majority of guys that have come out of Team Alpha Male, over the last decade and done really well. Here we see him, with Uriah Faber, and we know that Faber's very, very high on Song. He's really put him in the spotlight. He's kind of pushing him as the next big thing to come out of Alpha Male, now that Garbrandt is an established fighter. And that's one thing that Faber's done throughout his career. One of the big things that he's done at Alpha Male is constantly push the young up-and-coming fighters that are coming through. And Song seems to be the guy that Faber is really pushing hard at the moment. We can see, Song has been training at Alpha Male for a while. Here we can see him with all the guys at Alpha Male. We've got Andre Philly here, who's got a fight coming up. We've got Sarah McMahon here in the front. Who else have we got? Darren Elkins in the back. And I'm sure many, many others as well. So, Song's being pushed forward by Alpha Male, and even though his takedown defense and ground game didn't look very good when we last saw him tested in 2017, we'll get into that in a minute. It is worth saying that, training every day at Team Alpha Male with some of the best grapplers in his division, really, and some of the best grapplers, maybe not some of the best grapplers in the UFC, but some really fucking good grapplers. Obviously, he's training at a great gym to prepare him for a guy like Cody Stamann. Because if we think about Cody Stamann, what does he bring to the table? Well, he's also, quite a small bantamweight of 5'6". He's got that small, compact frame, that small, compact, athletic, explosive body type. Cody Stamann looks like he could have come out of Team Alpha Male. He's got a Team Alpha Male style of fighting, a Team Alpha Male, body type, where he's got decent cardio, good enough cardio to spam takedowns relentlessly for 15 minutes. But if you shut his wrestling down, doesn't really bring too much else to the table. And what I find interesting about this matchup is, if you were fighting Cody Stamann, you literally couldn't train at a better gym than Team Alpha Male to prepare yourself, because of all the guys that have trained at Team Alpha Male over the years with this body type, with this style of fighting. Song should be very well prepared for Stamann on Saturday night. And whilst Song's takedown defense and ground game have looked poor in the past, and I will show you clips of that in a moment, because you know me, I don't like to share opinions, I don't like to work in opinions, I only deal in facts. So I'm going to show you facts. The Song takedown defense and ground game was ropey. We're going to get into that in a minute, but he couldn't be training at a better gym. So while the footage that we have seen suggests Song might have some issues, he's training at a real fucking good place to prepare himself for Stamann. If the fight stays standing, it won't be a contest. Song will dominate, because his footwork, his speed, his accuracy, his movement, his striking is superb. It's absolutely superb. And for 22 years old, he's just absolutely incredible. But look, I need to stop waffling on and actually show you some footage of Song and his takedown defense and ground game, because that is really what is going to be the main dictator of how this fight plays out. So I'm going to show you a matchup from 2017 between Song Yadong and Edgar Scrivers from Kunlun Fight MMA 10. Just remember that at this stage of the fighter's career, Song could have improved tremendously since this fight. So let's jump into it right now and see what we see what we get. So remember that the reason why I'm going this far back into Song's career is because we really have no evidence of his takedown defense or ground game since this. He's predominantly been fighting strikers, so this matchup is really all we've got to work with in assessing his chances of shutting down Stamann's wrestling. And to be honest, Stamann's a pretty strong wrestler. Very good offensive wrestling, very good, blast double legs, nice single legs, decent chain wrestling. But what I will say about Stamann is that when he does get you down, his top control's not very good. Doesn't have a very, very heavy top game at all. So, even if Song Yadong does get taken down, Team Alpha Male fighters are historically very difficult to take down, even harder to hold down. They tend to be like springs and immediately pop back up to their feet. So, it's a tough fight for Stamann, make no mistake, but I do feel there are some big red flags in this performance against Scrivers, which we need to be aware of before we consider a bet on Song. Now, what I will say is, where we talk about how much young fighters can improve in a short space of time, if you look at Song's striking here, he looks very fast, he looks very technical, but he is light years ahead of this version of himself in 2019. If you go back and watch his last fight against Alejandro Perez, or any of his last 2-3 fights really, you'll see that he moves better, he's much more accurate, he sits down much harder on his shots, he throws a wider range of his shots, and he's way more confident as well. So, if we see a similar level of improvement in Song's grappling as we've seen in his striking between this fight, and his most recent fight against Perez, then it's likely that this guy's going to be a very good grappler. And Alpha Male is a predominantly grappling based gym, so there's a good chance he will have made huge improvements with his grappling. But of course, it's tricky to make assumptions, right? Because if you think of all the fighters that have ever been in the UFC, some guys just don't have very good takedown defense, and they go their whole careers not having good takedown defense. And it doesn't matter which gyms they train at, what they do to try and address that issue, they never really improve that much. And guys have gone to Team Alpha Male and trained there for a long time, and they haven't been able to make any real inroads to their takedown defense. And there we can see the first red flag there on that takedown. Struve was easily able to change levels and complete that double leg takedown and really establish a dominant position here. Song looked like he was going to be able to explode back up to his feet there, but I mean didn't, and didn't really do a very good job of clearing his legs and putting himself in a strong position to work his way back to his feet. I mean, he's trying here, but again forced to go back to full guard. Didn't show enough urgency or speed or explosiveness to clear his legs and explode back to his feet here. And of course, Cody Stamann is going to be a much stronger offensive wrestler than Struve is. So, it's definitely not good. It is, that's the first bit of red flag that we see here. But Song's worked his way back up to his feet now, and gets his own takedown. Kind of, Struve did pull guard. They kind of jumped guard and started fishing for this triangle. But I just wanted you to see there that Song's takedown defense pretty damn weak. And as we go through the rest of the fight, we can see that his opponent also almost hits a reversal there off some butterfly hooks. So we're going to scan through. We don't want this breakdown to be super long, but of course there are other flashpoints in this fight that I want to draw your attention to, so that you can see Song's takedown defense is a little bit questionable. And another thing that I was just kind of touching on was that some fighters have gone to Team Alpha Male and trained there for a very long time, and they haven't improved their takedown defense. You think of Teruto Ishihara, trained at Alpha Male for a long time and had really poor takedown defense throughout his entire career. Never really improved that much at all. And I know it's different. Ishihara is a completely different person. Ishihara's also got a very different body type. He's long and tall and lean and lanky, whereas Song's got that trademark typical alpha male compact body type. But it's just something for us to pay attention to. Here we see Yadong Song in on a very nice body lock takedown there, initiating a grappling exchange. But also taking some risks. He doesn't have a good position here because only one hook in. He's quite square to the side of his opponent here. His opponent could if he was a little bit more athletic, had a little bit more energy, could slip this right leg out and actually end up in top position here. And we'll see if Struve does that. Like I say, it's been a couple of weeks before I research this fight, but Song is in some danger here, and I'm interested to see if he's able to establish a dominant position here, or if Struve is actually able to. Okay, so Song gets the second hook in play, but is gonna be in. Okay, so Song's made all kinds of mistakes here, and he's got away with them. You look at this position here, guys. Where do we go? So he's got very, very slow at getting that second hook in. A more explosive, a more athletic grappler with a bit more energy, a bit more gas in the tank would have just kept his left arm tight to his left leg and prevented Song from getting that hook in play. And then he would have been in a very strong position to explode into top position. Now, Song took forever to get that second hook in, but even here, if we just hit play here, even here, you see Song's only got two very, very loose hooks in as he takes the back. Song is in big danger of ending up on the bottom here. Like I say again, if Edgar would have been a little bit more explosive, would have thought a little bit faster, these hooks are super loose, he would have been in a strong position to just spin in, pivot into top position. But Song gets away with it on this occasion. Edgar's was actually more concerned about fighting hands and preventing Song from getting an arm underneath the chin, which is understandable. But those hooks were loosey-goosey, and again, Edgar's is now realised that these hooks are not strong at all, and now trying to turn into Song and end up on top. And like I say, it's been a couple of weeks since I watched this, so I can't remember how this sequence plays out, but Song has been at risk of ending up on the bottom multiple times. And the point I'm trying to make is, against a higher level grappler like Cody Stamann, if Song starts to get sucked, look, Song really has absolutely nothing here. Song has absolutely nothing. Two very weak hooks in play. And Edgar's, a more strong, a stronger, more intelligent grappler would be able to just pivot and end up on top of Song, and Stamann fits that profile. And like I say, if Song starts to get sucked into these, these grappling exchanges with Stamann, he's making a lot of mistakes here that would get him into a lot of trouble. Now, again, I know this was 2 years ago, but all we can do is work on the... even in this position, as he gives up one of the hooks, a more explosive opponent would be able to pivot and end up on top of him. Again, so many opportunities for Edgars to end up on top, and he's really let Song off the hook here. I would like to see it. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I would be interested. He finally gets there. He finally does make Song pay for one of the mistakes he makes, and he does actually hit the reversal and end up on top. There you go, guys. It's what we've been talking about for the last few minutes, where Song made multiple mistakes that would have enabled Edgar to complete that reversal. Edgars did take the opportunity, eventually he did, and finishes the round on top. But again, Stamann's only going to need one of those openings to pivot and hit a reversal and end up on top. And even there, towards the end of this round, you see Edgars easily passes Song's guard and steps over into half guard. Watch this, easily gets into half guard there. It's not good. Lots of red flags on the ground for Song, looking to be a pretty low level here. And if he, look at this. He's going to get mounted. I'm not sure how long there is left in the round, but Edgars is just trying to slip his left leg out here and mount Song. Song really has nothing here. Song was a big... Song could have been mounted there, but I think, because of Song's, small, compact, explosive body type, Edgar thought about going for mount and then actually retreated on it because he was worried about, giving Song an opportunity to create a scramble and explode back to his feet. So he retreated on going for mount. Here we can see, easily passing guard to the other side though, and just lets Song off the hook, but he pulls guard on a guillotine attempt. Absolutely shocking fight IQ from Edgar here. Look at this, just gives up top position to Song. Terrible stuff, absolutely terrible. Very bad fight IQ from Edgar there. But as you can see, Song making a lot of mistakes on the ground, and if he makes these same mistakes against a guy like Cody Stamann, he's going to find himself in a hell of a lot of trouble. But like I say, it's been a couple of weeks since I watched this fight. Let's see if there are any more red flags in the third round. We'll just scan through these thumbnails. I think I've showed you all. I really need to show you, to be honest. Oh, they're on the ground again here towards the end of the third round. What happens here? Okay, Edgars throws a spinning back kick, ends up on the bottom. We don't need to see any more of that. But the point I'm trying to make is, we haven't seen any of Song's takedown defense since 2017. All these footage strikers. And if he shows up looking like he did against Edgar Scrivers, Stamann's going to have an easy night. It's going to be an easy night's work for Stamann. Stamann's a strong enough wrestler to repeatedly take him down, punish Song for those basic mistakes he's making on the ground, and cruise to a decision from top position. Now, if Stamann can't get the fight to the ground, Song is going to dominate because his striking, like I say, is amazing. But you know what they say, guys, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups, and I see a lot of people high on Song this weekend, and I can understand why. He's looked incredible, but his grappling's completely untested, and if you look at his current odds, Song is currently around about a 1.50 favourite, which is minus 200 for an implied probability of 67%. To get any value here on this guy, you've got to be capping him at least 70%. The best odds you can get right now are around about 1.53 minus 189, implied probability of 65%. In order to bet a guy at those odds, they need to tick pretty much every single box. You can't afford to have any assumptions about how much they've improved or how they'll show up and perform. You need to be absolutely sure that your man is going to show up and have the skills to beat their opponent in all areas. And based on what I've just shown you, categorically, there's no way that you can say that about Song. I'll just play you a little clip. Just hit the hit mute on the mic here, but you know what they say about assumptions. Of all fuck ups, the audio's not actually working there. We will actually sack that off. guys. I was going to play you a little bit of a clip. For some reason, having some technical difficulties there. I'm not sure if that was working. Oh, we might be back now. I was going to play you a little bit of a clip, guys. I think I fixed the problem. I think the mic was muted on my monitor. I'm really sorry, this is a bit amateur. Getting back into the swing of things after a 3-week break. But yes, the point I'm trying to make is you can't afford to assume the song will show up with improved takedown defense and an improved ground game, because we haven't seen any evidence of it, and assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. So based on what we have seen in the cage, this is quite an easy fight for Stamann because of how bad Song's takedown defense and ground game has looked. Having said that, with him training at Team Alpha Male for a long time, with Uriah Faber being very high on him, with him being so young and probably improving at such a rapid rate, there is a very good chance Song's takedown defense has improved to a significant level, which would make this a tough fight for Stamann. For me, this has got pass written all over it, guys. I hate to be boring, but from my perspective, I think Song's amazing. But I don't want to bet him as a huge favourite because there are definitely questions about his grappling, and I don't want to bet on Stamann either because if Song has improved, I think he's totally screwed, and I think there's a good chance he has improved. Otherwise, Faber wouldn't be pushing him so hard. And like I say, the improvements in his striking from the fight I just showed you to his last fight against Alejandro Perez is night and day. So it's likely we'll see a similar level of improvement in his grappling. That was a really long-winded way of going about all that. Very sorry. I'm still getting back into the swing of things. Did research this fight a few weeks ago, so it was kind of waffling and rabbiting, but anyway, hopefully we'll get a bit more fluid and pick up a little bit as this breakdown video continues. And now the next fight that I want to get into is a surprisingly interesting matchup, one that I wasn't really interested in at all when it got announced, partly because I was so annoyed that I wasted half of a day researching Jandiroba versus Olivia Renato Souza, only for Souza to pull out. But then when I started, taking a little bit of a dive into this Mallory Martin and Jandiroba fight, it was pretty damn interesting, and I'm looking forward to sharing what I found on this fight with you guys. So, I want to start off by saying that it is a big shame that Mallory Martin is taking this fight on short notice, because she's really good, and she's going to be taking this fight on around 1 week's notice, which is a shame, because irrespective of how this fight plays out, Martin's obviously got a tough task on her hands, stepping up on just a week's notice against a tough opponent like Jandiroba. But irrespective of the result on Saturday night, I think Martin's going to do very well in the UFC. I'm very impressed with her from going back and watching her past fights. Now, the interesting thing about this fight is that Martin's obviously quite a big underdog. If we take a look at the current odds, we have got Martin at around about a 3.35 underdog, which is plus 235 for an implied probability of around 30%. So to gain any value here, you'd want to be giving Martin around about a 40% chance of winning, which is tough to do because she's taking the fight on a week's notice. But like I say, she's very fucking good. Very, very fucking good. And if we look at the odds on Jandiroba, average odds currently around about 1.36, which is minus 278 for an implied probability of 74%. So to get any value on Jandiroba here, you have got to, give her just short of an 80% chance of winning, which I can tell you right now from my research is impossible. There's no way you can bet Jandiroba at these odds. So in order for me to assess this fight from a betting perspective, what I really needed to do was try and work out what Mallory Martin had been doing over the last few months and how prepared she was likely to be on Saturday night for this fight against Jandiroba, bearing in mind that she is stepping up on a week's notice. So, my usual methods for doing that were to go through the fighters' social media profiles, kind of stalk them on social media, see if they've been posting any training pictures, and also, try and find any interviews that they've done with MMA media, which is kind of where they share a little bit about how how they've been preparing for this fight, even though it is only on a week's notice. Have they been in the gym training anyway? What is their weight at? I find that with fighters like Mallory Martin, who are still very early in their career, who are still naive's not a nice word. It's not the right word, because I want to be very complimentary to Martin, an exciting young fighter, but I guess they're just not streetwise to the media yet. So I find that when fighters like Mallory Martin, who are inexperienced, who are young in their career, when they do interviews with MMA media, they do tend to reveal quite a lot. So that MMA media interviews can be a really useful resource for figuring out what condition a fighter is going to be coming into a matchup in, especially when they're taking a fight on short notice. So what I discovered during this stage of my research was, unfortunately, Mallory Martin hasn't been that active on social media lately. So, we don't really know what condition she's going to be coming in to the fight on Saturday night in. There aren't really any training pictures, any recent training pictures at all. The last one here was from October 28th, which is obviously a long time ago. But what I did find is that Martin did fight at the beginning of November, which was, in Invicta FC 38. So, in between this fight and when she got the call-up to fight Jandiroba, it's about a 3-4 week gap. So, she probably would have been in really good shape for the RCO fight. I've watched this fight. Her cardio held up. She looked very good. She worked very hard. How much of that has she lost in the 3.5-4 weeks between this matchup and when she would have got the call for Jandiroba? It's tough to say. Did she take that 4 weeks off and just drink beer every night and eat pizza, or did she get right back in the gym after a week or two? Is she still in good shape? It's tough to say, and obviously a social media profile doesn't give us any answers. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm just going to take a Strepsil because I do have a sore throat. It's that time of year where we're all getting viruses and flu. That'll help me talk. I'm really sorry. This is a super rough, super amateur video. I apologise, guys, but we're going to get through it, right? And we'll follow Mallory Martin as well, because she's got a bright future in MMA. So the second thing, kind of like the second stage of evaluating what condition she's going to show up in on Saturday night, so we don't learn anything from her social media profile, is... before we actually close down her social media profile, I just want to show you something interesting. She's actually D-Ron Wynn's girlfriend, which I find super interesting because she's got the exact same fighting style as D-Ron Wynn. She is a compact, explosive, athletic wrestler with a very heavy top game, very good cardio. So very similar fighting style to her other half, and also she's trained at some really, really good places. So here we can see her training at American Kickboxing Academy. More pictures there, AKA. And she has also spent time at Team Elevation, although might have to go really far back on her Instagram profile to find evidence of that, so I won't bore you with that. But if we go back even a little bit further, maybe here, you'll see that she's also spent time training at Tiger Muay Thai, which is one of the best MMA gyms in the world, despite being called Tiger Muay Thai. So Martin is a fighter that has taken her career very seriously. She's training with some of the best fighters in the world at some of the best gyms in the world. So while we don't know what her trainings look like over the last month, we do know she's to be taken seriously. She's legit. What was I going to say? Okay, yes, the second part of the kind of foraging process to determine what she's been doing over the last month was to try and go and find if she's done any interviews with MMA media, which I touched on a little bit earlier on. And unfortunately, she hasn't done any interviews since learning that she'd be doing, taking the fight against Jandiroba. But I did find an interesting interview from the 8th of August where Martin talks about some of the challenges that she has experienced up until this point in her career. And this interview's with James Lynch from The Score MMA. I can't believe I'm not subscribed to The Score. I am now. And yeah, big shout out to James Lynch, man. I go off on MMA media a lot and I criticise him, but James Lynch is a guy that works so hard. If you look at The Score, I think this is his YouTube channel. I'm not 100%, but I think it is. If you look at his YouTube channel, just gotta give him a bit of a shout out here. So if you look at all these videos, right, very low views on these videos. 807, 594, 754 here. Actually, we got a video. This didn't come up in my search. they are actually they're fucking with us. So I searched for Mallory Martin interviews, and because, wow, this video is fucking rough, because they haven't put Mallory Martin in the title, this interview didn't show up in the search results. Maybe this is why their views are so low. Maybe this is why their views are so low. I was just being really complimentary to James Lynch, saying spends a lot of time, pumping out videos on, lesser known fighters like Kilburn and Martin, and Landwehr, which don't get many views, but they form a really important part of my research. And I was going to say props to James Lynch, but he's actually done an interview here which didn't show up in search results. So you know what, guys? This video is going to be long anyway. And this video is going to give us some really strong clues as to the preparation that she's put in for this matchup. So you know what? Let's actually listen to this together. This is going to be the first time I watch this. It's going to be 10 minutes of your life watching this video. So we're going to bang this on now. I'm going to hit the mute button. And let's see what Martin says about her preparation. I'm really sorry, guys, but as you can see here, in the title it says Martin, not Mallory Martin. So when I was searching for Mallory Martin's interviews, it just didn't show up in search results. But we found one here. Let's go. Let's see what we get.
My next guest is going to be making her UFC debut coming up here next Saturday. She's going to be taking on Verena Jandiroba. It is Mallory Martin back here on the program. Mallory, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, but I did not get a UFC contract. Congratulations. I think people knew it was sort of a matter of time for this to take place. When did you find out the great news?
I found out Tuesday night. Totally wasn't expecting it. I had just ate a whole pizza.
Okay.
And then got.
What did we say, guys? Call me Mystic Mac, Mystic Chris. What did we say? Beer and pizza. And that is kind of crazy. I swear to you that I have not seen this interview before, else I wouldn't be doing this huge amateur thing where I just spring it on you. But look at that, guys. Fucking hell. Martin actually has been eating pizza since her last fight. I find that quite funny. But she's fucking entitled to it because she put on a great performance in Invicta against RCO. So she deserves a fucking pizza or 10. But yeah, let's get back to this.
The call and I was like, okay, but weight's good, so it's all good. I'm excited.
Well, I was going to say, why? I'm just curious why you were surprised, because I think people watching your last fight felt like, okay, like clearly you belong in sort of that talk of UFC talk and everything. Why specifically did you not feel that way?
I thought that it was going to be a little bit like maybe 1 or 2 more months, before I got the call. I didn't think it was going to be like a month after I fought. Or 3 weeks, I think I fought. Yeah, I think 3 weeks ago. But I just was expecting it to be like a little bit longer down the road, just talking for my manager, So I wasn't anticipating it to be that quick. So, but I'm ready. I've been training, and that's all that matters. So.
Yeah, and let's talk about that win at Invicta FC 38. That was just an awesome performance, and I think what people really loved is we really saw your emotion in the cage. We heard some of the trash talk and all that. What was the feedback like from that fight? Because it seemed like you really won over a lot of fans, even more so than on Contender Series.
Yeah, I think so too. The feedback was good. I got a lot of shit talk for the whole Happy Halloween thing, but
really,
I mean, when you're in the moment, I was in the moment, and it was kind of like a whole thing. I gave her candy at the weigh-ins, it was kind of like a gimmick, I gave her candy at the weigh-ins, told her Happy Halloween, and then in the cage I was in the moment, and it just kind of happened, but yeah, a lot of people were oh, that's so cringy, but they don't they're not in the cage, they don't fight, they don't know the emotions, they don't have the passion, so it is what it is.
Yeah, and here we are with the contract. How much do you feel like your management helped play a role in this? Because Danny Rubenstein, one of the best in the business, especially when it comes to getting fighters into the UFC.
Oh, for sure, huge. I think he's the best manager in the game, and he always had my back, and he got me where I wanted to be. So I'm very thankful for him and having him in my corner.
Who was the first person you told when you found out the news? I'm assuming Duran, or was it?
Yeah, Duran was with me.
Okay, that's cool. So what was that like? Because, you had the Contender Series fight. I think a lot of people felt like you should have got the contract then. And then, just a few months later, you had this fight. And then obviously now we're talking about you in the UFC. Have you been able to sort of soak all this in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was meant to be, not getting the contract. You know, I got an extra win, got another experience, you know, before getting into like the big leagues, I guess you would say. And I think it was meant to be, you know, this way. So I'm not like mad about it or anything. Like I know that, and even like the short notice and everything like that, like this is what it was supposed to be for me, you know. Like I took my pro debut on 4-day notice, a weight class up, you know. Like I'm used to this, you know, and I have more time. Like I had 13 days, you know, so, and I took on a girl I was making my pro debut and she was like 6-7 into her pro fights, you know, so it's nothing new for me. I've been here before. I know what to do. Like it's nothing new, you know, and I'm very mental in my mind. So even like, I like told myself going into the contender fight that was my UFC debut. So I could get like those emotions out then. And I did it with my last amateur fight. I told myself, this is my pro debut, you know. Went in there, I was so nervous, you know, got it out of the way. When I made my pro debut, I wasn't as nervous, you know, it was just another fight. So I like play these mind tricks on me so I prepare myself for the future. And I feel like it works a lot, you know. So I don't know, I'm ready. Like I'm ready.
And let's talk about your opponent here, 14-1 record. What do you know about her? How do you feel like you match up against her?
I think we match up really well. You know, she's a jiu-jitsu girl. I think my striking will be better. I think I'll be better on the feet, better to move, like sticker, strike in and out. I expect her to shoot on me. I fought on the same card as her when her last Invicta fight. And she fought, I don't know the other Brazilian girl name. She was a striker.
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank
I
too.
can't
So that
pronounce
makes
her
two of us.
name. But she like just went in, touched gloves, and then instantly shot, took her down, head and arm choke, you know? So I expect that from her, but I don't know if she's going to like she might play on the feet with me because I think my ground game's just as good as hers, you know, and I have that ground and pound, so she needs to worry about that. I don't think she threatens from the bottom, but it's nothing like that I haven't seen, you know what I mean? Like it's nothing that I haven't seen. So I'm not concerned about it, you know, if it goes to the ground or anything like that. I'm confident that I can hold her on the ground and everything like that. You know, she has a good record, but I feel like that's where I'm supposed to be, you know, and this is my first test and it's a good test for me and it's a good step up and I'm ready.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it. Now, you're in California right now. You were when we were setting up this interview, I realized that obviously because Duran's there. So what type of camp have you had leading into this fight?
So like right after my Invicta fight, I got back to training in Denver. With Lando's, Zingano's, and Team Elevation, you know, I got right back into sparring and everything like that, conditioning. I trained there for about 2.5 weeks, and then I flew out here to spend like Thanksgiving or whatever, and then not anticipating to get the call, but I've been training, you know, so at AKA and then wrestling with the high school kids that he coaches, so.
It's good. So getting a variety of looks, which is kind of interesting getting into this fight.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, how do you have to like manage like Thanksgiving? Because obviously you can't indulge it all really because you've got this fight coming up next Saturday. So how has that impacted the plans?
We had plans to go to like Tahoe and stuff, like have like a
really?
friends. What's it called?
Friendsgiving.
Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
I can't say
Jesus
it.
Christ.
Yeah.
But now we're just going to stay home and train. So, like, we're going to go train at 10 o'clock at Brianna the Bull, her gym. We're going to go train with her. And then I have to do my conditioning tonight. So I'm going to make him, like, a little Thanksgiving dinner without the turkey. But it'll be good.
Yeah, that's good. And at least you're dating someone who's a fighter, right? Like it's not like you're dealing with someone who has no idea what you're doing.
And as a wrestler.
And as
a wrestler, exactly. Yeah,
he's been through this.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you talked a bit about the weight cut there. You're pretty confident you're going to make it because you never miss weight, and obviously you're always in shape. It was just the one
I've
pizza.
missed weight once. Yeah, I've missed weight once by like 0.6, but
we don't need to worry about that. Yeah.
I can make weight tomorrow. Like I'm there. You know, like I'm very close, surprisingly. But even Danny told me, like, stay ready, keep your weight low. So I did. And it's going to be an easier weight cut than my last weight cut. So it'll be good.
Who's going to be in your corner for this fight?
It's going to be Matt Sims, Kenny Hill, and then George Hickman from Tiger. he's actually in the States right now, and he's cornering Cynthia.
I was going to say, because she was down there training. That was what made me
She was down there training for like, I don't know, 2 months or so. And
it was a while, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's in the States, and he's going to meet us there, and so he'll be in our corner too. And he's cornered me as well, so I'm excited to meet up with him and meet his little baby that he just had, and yeah, it'll be good.
How do you see the fight playing out on December 7th? You feel like you're going to win, but how do you see it unfolding?
I think it's going to be a chess match, like it's going to be very competitive, and I don't know, it's going to be action-packed, I'm going to push the pace, and I'm going to try to get my game going, I'm not going to wait on her or do anything like that. I'm going to go up right at the bat, so I think it'll be an exciting fight, and I'm ready.
And, I talked about soaking everything in. Like, have you thought about, like, where you were last year with, you had the injuries, and I know you wanted to get back in there, and you had all this, stuff to overcome, and now here you are in the UFC. Like, does this make this a little bit sweeter just because it wasn't an easy road to get to the UFC?
Yeah, actually, Wednesday was my 1-year anniversary from having surgery.
Oh, that's right. Wow. Okay.
So, like, right the day before the call, 1 year. So it was just like, wow, crazy. Like, I worked really hard during my physical therapy to get back and fight in the cage, and I did after 6 months, and then fought again at like 9 months or whatever, and then 1 year, now I'm fighting in the UFC in a week, so it's exciting.
And we're looking forward to it. It's coming up here December 7th. It is UFC DC. Mallory, always appreciate the time. Again, congratulations on getting the call. Just remind people where they can find you on social media, and if you have any sponsors or...
Yeah, shout out to James Lynch, man. Follow him on Twitter. Check out his YouTube channel, The Score MMA. I respect James Lynch because he's banging out videos with fighters that aren't going to get many views because people don't really care about, the kind of fighters he's covering. Fighters that compete on regional promotions and smaller promotions and stuff. So he's working really hard, man, to produce some really valuable content that is a big help to me in my research. So shout out to James Lynch. And just want to point to a couple of the things that Mallory Martin said in that interview, which I found quite interesting. So she said that, her weight is good. She's very confident about making weight. This will be an easier weight cut for her than her last fight a month ago in Invicta FC 38. She also said if she needed to, she can make weight tomorrow. She also said that after her win on the Contender Series, where, again, it was another impressive performance, she was told by her manager to stay ready. So she's kind of been expecting a call-up, so that's very interesting as well. She also said that she's been training a lot, with Brianna Van Buren, who also looked amazing in her UFC debut. And she's training with some really good girls, man. Like Brianna the Bull's an absolute beast. And also she trains with Emily Ducote, who's got a very similar fighting style to her. Of course, Ducote is in Bellator. But Ducote, very similar style. Compact, athletic, powerful, explosive wrestler with a nice explosive double leg shot. The only thing that she said, which I disagreed with, was that she believes she will have the advantage over Jandiroba when it comes to striking. Now, while I agree with her, Jandiroba's striking is not very good. Martin's striking is non-existent. So this is actually one of those rare matchups where I give Jandiroba the advantage in striking. But other than that, good stuff from Martin. She seems ready to go, which is super interesting. Now, before we were hit by that surprise interview, I was going to play you another one of James Lynch's interviews from August the 8th, where Mallory Martin said something pretty damn interesting about her career up until this point. I'm just going to hit play now and just have a listen to this.
Okay, well, that's awesome. We referenced it there, the injury. You've been out since, I think, September of last year. What was the injury? Like, how did you suffer it, and what was the recovery time and all that?
So I actually tore my ACL for the first time I tore it, because when I got the MRI, he said that I tore my ACL like years ago, and I tore it in Thailand. I know when I tore it, whatever. And then back in, I'd say October or November, I was sparring with one of my training partners, and he just went for a Muay Thai sweep, and I just pivoted the wrong way, and that's when I tore my meniscus. So all my pro fights I've had on a torn ACL. But when I tore the meniscus, I was supposed to fight in Japan, and I was supposed to leave. But when I tore the meniscus, I was supposed to fight in Japan, and I was supposed to leave like 2 weeks. I was scheduled to leave 2 weeks to finish off my camp in Thailand, but I like couldn't run. Every time I would grapple, my kneecap would pop out. Like things weren't going well, you know. So I had to get an MRI and figured out that like my ACL and my meniscus were completely torn and like surgery was needed. But yeah, and then he was like, your ACL has been torn for years and the meniscus is just like a new tear or whatever. But then I was like, yeah, I know when I tore my...
So there you go, guys. That's absolutely crazy, right? So Mallory Martin, her first pro fight was all the way back in 2016. And she said that she tore her ACL years ago. So all her pro fights, she was fighting with a torn ACL right up until her Contender Series fight back in August against Mikhail Desegny. So all these fights here, you know, unbelievably, Mallory Martin was fighting with a torn ACL, which is absolutely crazy when you think about it, but just goes to show how tough she is. So that's one thing to bear in mind if you are researching this fight and you're critical of Martin over some of the mistakes she made in these performances. Just remember, she was fighting with a blown knee, you know, pretty much fighting on one leg. And while I kind of wrap up my feelings around this fight and summarize how both these girls match up from a stylistic point of view, I'm just going to leave this fight playing in the background between Mallory Martin and Maycee Barber from all the way back in September 2017. And of course, we all know Maycee Barber is a beast. Now, this fight isn't that relevant at all. You know, it was 2 years ago. We just heard Martin say that she competed with a blown knee. So she was significantly injured in this fight, you know, and also, you know, Martin's 25 years old. Back then, she only would have been 22, 23. It would have been her third pro fight. She's going to have improved a lot since then. And Maycee Barber back then would have been like 19 years old. But it's just something for you to watch while I'm summarizing this fight, talking about how these girls match up from a stylistic point of view, rather than you listening to me banging on. So, from a stylistic point of view, it's a very interesting matchup. You know, I did say that I disagreed that Martin had the advantage striking. For me, and you'll see in this matchup, and Martin's striking hasn't really improved too much from this matchup in his recent fights. Her recent fights, sorry. Her striking's at quite a low level. Jandiroba's at a low level as well, but there's no doubt that Jandiroba's striking is better. If the fight stays standing, I would expect Jandiroba to outstrike Martin quite comfortably. Now, both these girls are primarily grapplers, and you heard Martin touch on it in that interview where she said Jandiroba's got that base in BJJ and Martin's got that base in wrestling. If you really want to kind of visualize how Martin looks at this stage in her career, of course I can't show you footage, it's copyright protected on Fight Pass, but she's got a very similar style to Emily Ducote. You know, strong offensive wrestler, heavy top game, and a very intelligent wrestler as well. You could tell that she's very well trained. You can tell that she's been working for years with very high level training partners, because she doesn't make any mistakes when it comes to wrestling. She understands that, you know, when she shoots in on her opponent, she doesn't put her head in a dangerous place. She always lands takedowns into side control or half guard, which will be really useful against a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt like Jandiroba, who's very active off her back, very tricky on the ground, because, you know, Martin's wrestling should be able to shut down a lot of Jandiroba's sweeps from the bottom. And I do like Martin's chance of winning this fight. If you go back and watch Jandiroba's last fight against Carla Esparza. Now, this is a mistake she made. Obviously, Paige Van Zandt style head and arm throws got her into a little bit of trouble against Maycee here. You know, Maycee's got a deep hook in on the right side. Martin's about to have a back take, and you certainly wouldn't want to do that against Jandiroba. But I can assure you, Martin's improved a hell of a lot since then. She doesn't really do that shit anymore. So this fight in the background, don't put too much weight on it, guys. It's more for some of you guys to watch, just to entertain you while I'm talking. Martin's a different fighter now. She's much better than this, a much more solid grappler. But Jandiroba in her UFC debut against Carla Esparza did show questionable takedown defense. Wasn't the best off her back either. And of course, we've seen her look a little bit sloppy on the ground against Missouri in No 8 as well, which is one of the reasons why this fight ended in a split decision. Also, similar weaknesses on the ground against Erica Almeida, another fight that ended in a split decision. And I would say Martin's a much stronger grappler than both Inoue and Almeida. So this is a very, very interesting fight. It's a tricky fight to cap because obviously Martin's taking the fight on a week's notice. And we haven't really seen her fight any high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. And Jandiroba is very crafty on the ground. She's very tricky. She's got very nice sweeps, very nice reversals. Very good at controlling her opponent and putting them in difficult positions. We haven't really seen Martin react to that, and I think this fight's going to go one of two ways, and based on research, very, very difficult to predict which way it's going to go. We're either going to see Martin use a heavy top game and nasty ground and pound to take Jandiroba down, beat her up from top position, and cruise to an easy win, or we're going to see Martin get those takedowns, because I don't believe Jandiroba has the takedown defense to keep this fight standing. And we're going to see Jandiroba hit sweeps, hit reversals, end up on top, tie Martin up in submissions and cause us some big problems. But Martin did say in that interview that we watched with James Lynch that she knows what to expect from Jandiroba. Jandiroba's not going to do anything that she hasn't seen before, and she feels very comfortable with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But she did also say in that interview that she believes she'll have an advantage striking over Jandiroba, which isn't true. So, gotta take some of the things she said with a pinch of salt. So, to summarise, Martin is an interesting bet this weekend. Now, whether you bet Martin or not, there you see a beautiful double leg shot there. That would be enough to put Jandiroba on her back, no problem. The difference now, again, I'm seeing little tiny improvements that Martin's made. Martin shot that double leg right into Macy Barber's guard. If you go back and watch her last few fights, you'll now see she'd shoot that takedown right into half guard or side control. She wouldn't give her opponent like Barber in this instance an opportunity to get that active guard going. But you can see a little bit of Martin's strong wrestling there. But from a betting point of view, this really depends on your risk tolerance, right? If we look at the odds, there's no way you can bet on Jandiroba at all, because Martin's got the wrestling to cause her problems. The real question becomes, do you want to take a gamble on Martin? And it will be a gamble. She's taking the fight on a week's notice, and Jandiroba's decent. But the real question you have to ask yourself is, do you give Martin a 40% chance of winning? And that's what you need to get any value on her here. And it is possible. It's definitely possible, but it is a shot in the dark because she's taking the fight on short notice. I don't personally want to bet on a UFC fighter making their debut on short notice, because a massive percentage of fighters making their debut on short notice lose, and Jandiroba is very tricky on the ground. But Martin is one of the livest underdogs I've seen on this card. There's no doubt about it. And if her odds did get a little bit crazy, sometimes you see this late notice debutants, up in this kind of odds range, I would take a shot on her, but it's not for me. What I'm basically going to say to you guys is, if you're looking to have a bit of fun this weekend, place some bets to make these fights more entertaining, more interesting, and you just bet for fun, you bet for entertainment, Martin's one of the better bets this weekend, and a very live underdog. And if she shows up looking absolutely fantastic at the weigh-ins, I might actually take a gamble on her myself, but I'm not going to make a decision on it yet. I need to see how she looks at the weigh-ins. Need to see what shape she's in, compare it to how she looked in her past weigh-ins. Like I say, if she looks on Friday at the weigh-ins like she did in her past weigh-ins, I might take a gamble on it. At the moment, it's a pass for me, but Martin is definitely on my radar, definitely a fighter I'm thinking of betting, because she does have a good chance of beating Jandiroba this weekend. And I think that covers everything that I wanted to say. That does cover everything that I want to say. Let's move on to the next fight. Let's go. Who are we going to talk about next, boys? Who are we going to get into? We are going to talk about one of the higher profile fights on the card, Stefan Struve against Ben Rothwell. And I've got to be completely straight up with you. This is red flag city. Tons of red flags for both guys. Let's kick off the video by talking about some of Stefan Struve's red flags. And the first red flags that we need to talk about is the injuries and health problems that Stefan Struve has encountered throughout his career. So, of course, I know it was a very long time ago, all the way back in 2013. But what I've found throughout my career as a professional gambler, making a living betting on MMA, I have found that when a fighter breaks their jaw or suffers a broken jaw injury, their chin is never the same again. And all the way back in 2013, Stefan Struve suffered a broken jaw at the hands of Mark Hunt. That's going to affect his ability to take a punch. It almost always does. It affects the fighter's confidence. It's not good. It is not good. And I don't want to go into the reasons too much as to why it's not good, but a broken jaw almost always affects a fighter's ability to take a punch. Of course, there will be outliers, but generally speaking, it ain't good. That's the first health reason, the first injury. Also, we know Stefan Struve does battle with a heart condition where he has got a leaking aortic valve and an enlarged heart. Now, he does appear to have this under control, or at least he tells us he's got it under control. He takes medication to deal with this condition. But again, it's a health issue that is chronic. It is there. It's not going to go away. And it is something that Struve does take, strong medication for, which has, an effect on his body. So that's another red flag. Now let's talk about another red flag with Struve. Of course, he mentioned the big R after his last fight against who is it against? His last fight against Marcos Rogério de Lima. He retired, and now he is coming out of retirement, and he doesn't care what people think, basically, which is very cool. I don't think you should give a fuck what people think. You should do whatever you want to do in life and not pay attention to other people. But Struve has talked about retirement for a long time. He's retired on a couple of different occasions. And in my experience, again, there will always be outliers. There will always be exceptions to the rule. But as a general rule, just as a general rule with broken jaws, when a fighter starts to think about retirement and talk about retirement, they should definitely retire. And when fighters try to prolong their career and come back after retiring or talking about retiring, it never ends well. It almost always ends badly. Pretty much every example I can think of has ended badly. So, Struve talking about retirement, huge red flag. Let's talk about some red flags with his opponent, Ben Rothwell, because he's got his own issues going on. The first and most obvious, there is one more red flag with Struve. He's got a lot of miles on the clock. I know he's only 31 years old, but he's had 40 pro fights, which is an enormous amount of pro fights. You've also seen Struve in some absolute wars. He's been knocked out multiple times, knocked out against Volkov. He has been knocked out against Mark Hunt, had his jaw broken, knocked out against Travis Brown, knocked out against Roy Nelson, knocked out against Junior Dos Santos. He's taken a lot of damage, a lot of head trauma. All that adds up. 40 pro fights. It's a shitload of fights. Ben Rothwell's also got the same problem, had well over 40 pro fights. He's also a lot older than Stefan Struve at 38 years old. And in his last two performances against Andrei Arlovski and Blagoy Ivanov, there are definite signs that Father Time is starting to catch up with him. He's looked very gun-shy, very hesitant. And again, in my experience, there will always be general rules, exceptions to the general rule. There will always be outliers. So please don't feel the need to comment and let me know about the outliers. I know they exist, but as a general rule, when a fighter starts to look gun shy, they never get it back. It just gets worse, and that is usually a sign that Father Time has caught up with them, because they see the openings, but they're just not quick, just not sharp enough to act on them anymore. And of course, another huge red flag with Rothwell is that he has had his run-ins with USADA. He has a bit of a history of using performance-enhancing drugs. Of course, in 2017, USADA suspended him for 2 years, and that led to a very long layoff between 2016 and 2019, and he hasn't looked good since he come back. He looked very gun-shy. Andrei Arlovski boxed his face off. So that's another red flag. So plenty of red flags. So it goes without saying, based on everything I've just said, if you bet this fight, you're putting your money in danger. You're putting your money in at a lot of risk, because neither of these guys are solid. Both guys have got issues. So if we look at how these guys match up from a stylistic point of view, it's a very good stylistic matchup for Rothwell. But this is one of those fights where he has two easy paths to victory, Whether he will take those easy paths to victory, I'm not sure, because like I say, he looked very gun-shy, very hesitant in his last 2 fights. So what are those paths to victory? Well, the first path is taking Struve down and dominating him from top position. Struve is abnormally tall for the division at 7 foot tall. And like a lot of guys who are abnormally tall for their divisions, he has appallingly bad takedown defense. A strong gust of wind would be enough to take Struve down. I've seen Scarecrow with better takedown defense than Struve. If Rothwell wants to get this fight to the ground, he should be able to easily. Struve has no takedown defense. Another issue with Struve is that he's very weak off his back. Doesn't really make any attempt to get back to his feet. He just starts throwing up long shot triangles, long shot submissions, hoping to catch his opponent in something, but he's not that dangerous off his back. Way too happy on his back. Doesn't show any urgency to get back to his feet. This will be an easy fight for Rothwell if he uses his wrestling to take Struve down and control him from top position. Because even though Rothwell never shoots takedowns, we never see him try and take his opponent down. If you're watching this and you've only been an MMA fan over the last few years, you probably don't even know Rothwell started out his career as a wrestler and a grappler. But when on the ground, he is a very high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He is very heavy from top position, and he's a decent wrestler. But he is one of these infuriating guys that just doesn't use it. And I mean, if you look at Andrei Arlovski, his takedown defense has looked really questionable, over the last few years. He's now almost 40 years old. It's understandable. And yet Rothwell waited until the 3rd round before trying to take Arlovski down in this fight. And by then, it was way too late in the day. So Rothwell never uses his wrestling, but it is an easy path to victory. If he uses his wrestling on Saturday night, he should beat Struve easily. And you can't make assumptions with fighters. You can't assume what they will do and what they won't do, because how often do fighters have an easy path to victory and they just don't take it? But what I would say is, if ever there was a time when Rothwell was going to fight smart and just try and get an easy payday and fight to his strengths, it would be now. At the end of the day, his back's against the wall. He's been shamed after being suspended by USADA. He's got no respect in the division. He's nowhere near the top 10. Well, he shouldn't be anywhere near the top 10. I don't know what the actual rankings are. Maybe he is. Who knows? But he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he must know one more loss against Stefan Struve probably means he's headed to Bellator or even retirement at 38 years old. So if Rothwell is still motivated to fight, which I believe he is because he says he is in all of his fight week interviews, then he will come out, fight smart on Saturday night, take Struve down and get an easy win. Now, even if Rothwell doesn't look to take Struve down and control him on the ground, this still could be an easy fight for him. And the Rothwell of 4 or 5 years ago would have simply walked Struve down, stepped into boxing range, let his hands go, uncorked a bomb, and knocked Struve out. Struve's got very bad very bad striking defense. He's very easy to hit. He's also a little bit chinny, and we know Rothwell's got a decent chin. He can take it. If you look back at his career, he hasn't been knocked out since 2009 against Cain Velasquez. He hasn't been knocked out in 10 years, which is pretty impressive because he's been fighting killers like Mark Hunt, Gilbert Yvel, Brendan Schaub. I know that'll be controversial for many of you. Brandon Vera, Alistair Overeem, Matt Mitrione, these guys hit very hard, and none of them could knock Rothwell out. So he's got a beard on him, I will say that much, literally and figuratively speaking. So Rothwell can win this fight standing up and on the ground, but like I say, he never goes for wrestling, and he is a little bit gun-shy since being suspended by USADA. So will he have the confidence to step into boxing range, get inside on a 7-foot-tall fighter with an 84.5-inch reach like Struve and land a bomb? I don't know. He looked gun-shy against Arlovski, looked gun-shy against Ivanov, but Struve is pretty easy to hit. So yeah, this is one of those fights where, if you look at the odds at the moment, Rothwell's currently around about a 1.70 favourite, which is minus 143 for an implied probability of 59%. And if we look at the odds on Struve, Struve is currently around about a 2.20 favourite, which is plus 120 for an implied probability of 45%. So the bookies are roughly seeing this as a 45 to 60 fight in favour of Rothwell. And it's tough to disagree with him because Rothwell has the advantage everywhere. You know, I wouldn't bet Struve because, like I say, he's so easy to take down. He's so hittable. This will be an easy night's work for Rothwell if he shows up and fights smart. But at the same time, in order to get any value on Rothwell at these odds, you have to give him, you know, a 65-ish chance of, a 65% chance of winning, around about there in that ballpark. And I just don't know if I can get to that figure, you know, with Rothwell being, I say, 38 years old. You know, he's possibly built a career on performance-enhancing drugs. You know, will he just follow Struve around the octagon on Saturday night, getting outpointed by a fighter with a longer reach, with more technical kickboxing? You know, Struve doesn't do a very good job of fighting long, but if Rothwell isn't going to pull the trigger, if he isn't going to let his hands go, it might not matter. So this is a really tricky one for me, and I hate to be boring. I know this video's long. I know you want bets. I know you want picks, but I like money. I really, really like money. It's one of my favourite things in the world, and I'm not going to sacrifice good money by risking it on bullshit bets. And for me, there's just too many red flags with both these guys. I don't see a very good deal. I don't see very good value on either side. So for me, this is an easy pass. Very sorry to be boring, but money is my priority in this game. And I just want to scan through my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything out there. I think I got it all in. Yeah, looks pretty good to me. Right, let's go into the next fight that I want to talk about in this video, which is going to be Billy Quarantillo against Jacob Kilburn. Now, this was a kick in the nuts. I was very frustrated because I spent an hour breaking this fight down, or breaking Quarantillo's initial fight down against Chris Fishgold, only for Fishgold to pull out with an injury about a week ago, which means Jacob Kilburn is now stepping up to take this fight on about a week's notice, just like Mallory Martin. It's a tough assignment for Kilburn, but it is an interesting fight. And of course, this is the debut for both Quarantillo and Kilburn, although Quarantillo has competed on Dana White's Contender Series. Now, this fight's interesting because, just to get out the way straight away, both these dudes have absolutely terrible takedown defense. Really, really bad takedown defense. The difference between both guys is that Quarantillo is very active on his back. He's got an active guard. He's constantly hunting for submissions. Not particularly dangerous on the ground, but, you know, if Kilburn ends up on top of Quarantillo, he's going to have to work very hard to defend himself against the relentless barrage of submission attacks that Quarantillo is going to throw at him. But both these guys are primarily strikers, and they both have very different styles. If you want to visualize Billy Quarantillo's style of striking, he's kind of like a Diaz-style striker. Bad striking defense, very easy to hit, but relentless. Throws a high volume of strikes, very diverse range of strikes, body shots, kicks, you know, decent boxing combinations, and he just looks to break his opponents. This guy's relentless. He's got cardio for days. He's a nightmare. And if you look at Kilburn, not in the way that he moves or looks or athletically, he's not like Nico Price in terms of the technique he displays, but he does remind me of Nico Price because his technique's pretty average, but Kilburn has absolute dynamite in his hands. 2 nuclear missiles in each of his hands. He has abnormal power for the division. He hits very, very hard. And I wish I could show you, because I like to work in you know, facts, not opinions. But I can't show you because these two fights are copyright protected on UFC Fight Pass, but they are both on there. If you want to see what I'm talking about, go and check out his 2 knockout wins in his last 2 fights. This guy hits very, very hard, and also deceptively fast as well. A bit like Nico Price in that, you know, I almost feel like Price is so bad, so sloppy with his technique, that fighters just don't take him seriously, and then out of nowhere he explodes and lands one of his nuclear bombs. And I kind of feel the same about Kilburn when you go back and watch his last 2 fights, and that's very, very important in this fight. It's a very interesting point to pay attention to, because Quarantillo has, you know, just like where we're comparing him to Nate Diaz, has very bad striking defense. He's very, very easy to hit, and you do not want to be getting hit by Kilburn. This guy, got an itchy nose, sorry guys. This guy definitely has power in his hands, but you guys know me. I don't like to deal in opinions. We like to deal in facts. So let's watch a little bit of Quarantillo so you can kind of see his striking defensive holes for yourselves. So this fight, there we see, you didn't have to wait very long at all to see his holes. But this fight is against Ryan Fillingame from all the way back in February 2017. She would have expected Quarantillo to have improved a little bit since then. But I can tell you, I have watched all these fights. Even though I can't show you in this video, and the same weaknesses do appear to be there with Quarantillo's striking defense. But just take a look at this. So early on, eats a big right hand here straight out the gate, behind his ear. And as this, we'll play 5 minutes of this fight as I summarize my research. You'll just see Quarantillo eat some big shots in this round. So how do I see this fight playing out? Well, first of all, did he eat another big shot there? I think he did. He ate another big one there. Another big right hand, yeah, another big right hand there. But before we summarize this up, let's look at the odds. So Quarantillo currently around about a 1.30 favourite, which is minus 333 for an implied probability of 77%. So to get any value here, you'd have to be capping Quarantillo at 80% or better, which is very difficult to do because, like I've said, Kilburn hits very hard, and like I'm about to show you, Quarantillo has bad striking defense. Now, if we look at my nose, is so itchy, guys. I think I've overdosed on Strepsils or something. Kilburn's around about an average of 3.70, which is plus 270 for an implied probability of 27%. To get any value on Kilburn here, you want to be giving him at least a 37% chance of winning this fight. So let's go back into this. And you just see the first 5 minutes where Quarantillo's striking defense on display there. It's another big overhand right there as his opponent goes. The body's kind of hands down low, head in an awkward position, exposed there to be hit. You look, I don't hate to keep rewinding, but you really need to see this just so that you don't think about, placing a bet on Quarantillo, checking him any parlays or accumulators this weekend. He eats a big right hand there, another right hand there. He goes the body there, but he's completely exposed. You look in just a few moments, he's wide open again. When they break on this position, I believe. When they break, don't want to skip too far ahead in case I miss it. They're back out in the centre. You'll see a little bit more of Quarantillo's weaknesses there. Just comes forward, hands down low. Sorry, guys. Feeling pretty ill, Sorry about this. And you see him getting overly aggressive. Eating a big right hand there. Eats a left hook there. And as the round goes on, you just see a lot of openings in Quarantillo. He's very easy to hit. And like I say, Kilburn carries so much power. It's only going to take one shot. Now, again, there you see Quarantillo's bad takedown defense that I mentioned earlier on in the video. Very, very poor takedown defense, but I won't go into that here because I spoke about it for an hour in the Fishgold versus Quarantillo fight, because obviously Fishgold is a strong wrestler, so he's a massive part of the research. So if you want to learn more about Quarantillo's grappling, go back and watch that video. But here you can see he's also very active off his back, throwing the legs up on a triangle here. Like we said, even though his takedown defense is bad, Kilburn's going to be having to work very, very hard to maintain top position if he does choose to go for a takedown here. And Kilburn's grappling hasn't looked very good in the past. If we go back to when the fight is standing, see more of Quarantillo's striking defense on display here. Just hands down low, very easy to hit. Doesn't really read his opponent very well. Stands flat-footed in front of him. Like I say, Kilburn's got bombs in his hands. So this is just a really, just a really obvious fight for me that is just not good for betting, because Quarantillo, from a technical point of view, is probably a bit better. Well, probably quite a bit better on the ground, but Quarantillo's better than Kilburn everywhere. But the risk of Kilburn knocking him out means you can't put Quarantillo in parlays or accumulators. It's just too risky. Quarantillo is wide open to the KO, but at the same time, because Kilburn's second best everywhere, because he's stepping up on 1 week's notice, I don't feel like taking a gamble on him as a big underdog either. The difference between him and Martin is Martin trains at some of the best gyms in the world with some really good fighters. she's very, very good. She can win the fight on merit by using her wrestling to out-grapple Jandiroba. So she's, worth considering as a bet. Whereas, when we look at Kilburn, trains at a small independent gym, pretty low level everywhere. Quarantillo a bit better everywhere. So it's just different. Let's just fucking pass. Let's pass, guys. It is not worth betting this fight. But at least you know a little bit more about Kilburn and Quarantillo now, which you could possibly use to make money in live betting. And again, I'm sorry to be boring, but I like money. And there are just no strong positions to put your money in on that fight. And now, I need another Strepsil because my throat is causing me big issues. You're only supposed to take like one of these. I think it was every 2 hours or 4 hours, something like that. You're only supposed to take one of these every 2 hours, 4 hours. And I think this is my fourth just since I started recording this video. So I don't know if anyone has ever overdosed on Strepsils. Don't know if anyone has ever overdosed on sweets to help your throat. But at least if I overdose, it'll be recorded on video so that people will know to follow the dosage advice on Strepsils and not to take the piss and take more than the recommended amount. But I think we're going to be okay. Maybe my tongue will just go numb, something like that. Starting to feel a little bit numb. It's all good though. I'm willing to do it for you boys. I'm willing to overdose on Strepsils for you boys. That's how much I love you. My throat is causing me some issues though. So let's move on and try and get through this video and through these fights as quickly as we can. So this next fight is Kunitskaya against Aspen Ladd. Another very interesting fight. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. And Aspen Ladd was one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet this weekend because from memory, I felt that she was quite a bit better than Kunitskaya everywhere. If you go back and watch Kunitskaya's fights, she doesn't really have any boxing. All her striking's kicks based. She's not a particularly strong wrestler either. She's quite heavy from top position, but Aspen Ladd is a decent wrestler herself. And really, Kunitskaya's main strength is just using her physicality. She's a big girl at 5'8" with a 68-inch reach. That's not disrespectful. She's beautiful, talented, athletic. Very, very skilled fighter, but she is quite big for the bantamweight division, and she uses that physicality to drive her opponents into the cage and just beat them up in the clinch, really. Very active in the clinch, short knees, short punches, things like that. And that's why I felt Aspen Ladd would be a good bet here, because she's a significantly better boxer than Kunitskaya, a decent wrestler, heavy top game. She's decent in the clinch as well, and a decent level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or else she wouldn't have been able to have hung with Sahara Eubanks in her last fight. And after research, all those feelings were true. Everything I just said to you was true. It was all backed up by the footage. But I just have nagging doubts with Aspen Ladd. So before we really delve into this fight deep, let's take a look at the odds. So Aspen Ladd is currently around about a 1.67 favourite, which is minus 149 for an implied probability of 60%. So to get any value on Ladd here, you've got to give her at least a 65% chance of winning. If you look at the odds on Kunitskaya, she's currently around about 2.30, which is plus 130 for an implied probability of 43%. So, Aspen Ladd is better than Kunitskaya everywhere. But her style of fighting all revolves around breaking her opponents with hustle. So, standing up, she's got that Leslie Smith style of fighting, where she's just going to come forward with relentless pressure. She's never going to slow down. She's got cardio for days. Ironically, she did slow down a little bit in her last fight against Eubanks. But she's going to come forward with relentless pressure, through a high volume of strikes, block punches with her face, and just look to wear you down Leslie Smith style. Now, that worked against her in her last fight against Germaine de Randamie because, Aspen Ladd does have bad striking defense, and she got death-shotted by de Randamie. She got absolutely flatlined and knocked out. But Kunitskaya, like we said, doesn't really have any boxing, doesn't have any power in her hands. So it's unlikely she will be able to do that to Aspinallad. Aspinallad's usually got a pretty good chin. She can take it. Let's be real, de Randamie is considered the greatest female Muay Thai fighter of all time. So it's no wonder that Aspinallad couldn't walk forward, blocking punches with her face against her. But their usual style should be okay against Kunitskaya. So she looks to out-hustle people on the feet, and on the ground she looks to out-hustle them too. She's constantly working on the ground, constantly working to, land shots with ground and pound or improve her position or make her opponent work. And she just relies on breaking the will of her opponent and wearing them down. And that might be an issue here, because Kunitskaya is very physically strong, very athletic, very powerful. She's also got cardio for days, so she's not going to break. And we also saw in her last fight against Marion Renault that she's incredibly tough. She had her nose absolutely crushed. She was in one hell of a state. Might actually be able to pull up a picture here, and you might actually be able to see the damage that Kunitskaya was wearing after that fight. It's not the worst. So here you can see, Kunitskaya's nose absolutely crushed. There's another shot of it there. And this is probably the best shot at the end of the fight. So yeah, Kunitskaya, busted up eyes, busted up lips, busted up nose. Her nose was crushed. But she still hung in there for 3 hard rounds with Marion Renault, which shows that she is incredibly tough. She's not going to wilt under Aspinallad's pressure, which makes this a very interesting fight, because Kunitskaya is difficult to take down, and she does have decent footwork. So while she doesn't necessarily have the boxing to play the role of matador and pick Lad off as she comes forward, she does have the footwork to stay light on her feet for 3 rounds and just circle away from Lad and possibly chip away at her, with leg kicks and body kicks. Because Aspinallad's very predictable. Like I say, she's got that Leslie Smith style where she looks to just come forward, zombie mode it, and just break people with pressure. And Kunitskaya can stay light on her feet. She does have the cardio to use lots of footwork and pick her off. So this is a tricky fight for me, from a stylistic point of view, because Aspinallad is better everywhere. There's absolutely no doubt about it in my mind. There's no area of this fight where Kunitskaya has a technical advantage. However, Lad is very predictable, and Kunitskaya is not going to break, and that is Aspinallad's main goal. She looks to just wear on her opponents, break her opponents, and if it means she gets taken down to force her opponent to work, if it means that she gets, punched in the face coming forward with relentless pressure, she's willing to put herself in the firing line and getting punched in the face. I don't think that's going to be effective against Kunitskaya. And of course, there's other factors to take into consideration here. Just to jog your memory, Aspinallad has had issues with weight cutting in the past. If we take a look here, her last fight, no, she didn't actually miss weight, but she killed herself to make weight against Jermaine de Randamie. She hasn't actually missed weight, but Aspinallad does kill herself to make weight in every fight, and of course this was her walking out to weigh in for her last fight against Jermaine de Randamie. Just to jog your memory on this, she looked absolutely terrible. She looks in discomfort, she looks in pain, she looks distressed. She is actually struggling to stand up here and weigh in. She's in one hell of a mess. And of course, this was just, this fight only took place, call it, 5 months ago. What kind of lasting damage has this type of weight cut done to a young 24-year-old fighter? Has Aspinallad damaged her body beyond the point of repair, or beyond the point where she would have recovered in just 5 months? How is her chin going to look? How much did she deplete her body? Will it be even more difficult this time for her to make weight after putting her body through all this stress? Has Aspinallad's body changed to the point where she can't make 135 anymore? Now, she is only 5'6". She is average size for a bantamweight. It's not like she's particularly big for the division. If Kunitskaya had problems missing weight at 5'8", making weight, I would understand. She's on the bigger end of bantamweights being that tall. Aspinallad, not a particularly big bantamweight, shouldn't be having this much problem making the 135 pound limit, but clearly in the past there have been issues with diet, training, the weight cutting process. There's issues here, and we can see Aspinallad struggling very, very badly. We'll skip ahead a little bit. to this stage of the video, where she looks in a world of trouble, shivering, shaking, and quite clear that this was a terrible weight cut for her. And of course, she went out and was knocked out by Germaine de Randamie in 16 seconds, looking absolutely terrible. And of course, the result, the aftermath, the fallout from this whole, I mean, there she's shaking, she's trembling. The fallout, the aftermath of this was that the California State Athletic Commission said that they quite simply weren't going to let Aspen Ladd fight at 135 pounds anymore until they were sure she'd be able to make the weight healthily. So they suspended her from fighting at 135 pounds, which you can see here. This ban has now been lifted because over the last, 5 months since that whole ordeal, the California State Athletic Commission director Andy Foster has worked with Aspen Ladd to have meetings, and they've weighed her several times throughout the last 5 months to make sure her weight, her walking weight, is at a level where she's not going to absolutely have to kill herself to make 135 pounds. So she's been weighing in at about 150 pounds, which means she'd have to cut 14 pounds to make the 136 pound limit. And California State Athletic Commission, after a few of these meetings, are now happy that she can make the weight healthily. And if we scroll down just a bit further, we can see here she is meeting with Andy Foster. This is Andy Foster here from the California State Athletic Commission. And since then, Aspen Ladd looking in, my nose is itching again, definitely overdosing on Strepsils. Sorry guys, that's the way it goes. So pro tip anyway, if you have a sore throat and you want to take more than one of these every 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever they recommend, just know the side effects are you feel like choking and your nose keeps itching. There you go. But your sore throat ain't there anymore. On your tongue goes a little bit numb as well, and you tend to waffle and talk a lot of shit on YouTube videos. Those are the side effects. It's a price worth paying, in my opinion. Here we can see Aspen Ladd looking very muscular, looking in very good shape, and what I would say is she looks much bigger than she did in her previous fights. Much more muscular. You always see Aspen Ladd's cardio's never been in question, but she always did look a little bit soft. Now very muscular, very toned. Not sure what this is going to do for her weight cut, because of course muscle is heavier than fat, but I do understand from my very limited knowledge of weight cutting that it is easier to cut water weight from muscles than fat, so maybe it will be an easier cut. It's quite clear Aspen Ladd is working hard to make changes to make this weight cut not a problem anymore. Will she be okay at the weigh-ins on Friday? Only time will tell. And in this interview from yesterday with Helen Yee, we'll subscribe to Helen. Can't believe you're not subscribed already. Give her a like. Here is Aspen Ladd talking about the weight cut in the de Randamie fight. This is it straight from the horse's mouth.
First off, how has this camp been for you?
It's been great. I feel healthy and feel great coming into it.
So are there any changes that you made in this camp, whether, nutrition-wise or training-wise?
Nutrition-wise, it's just been very on point. I have a dietitian and a chef at home, but we work together with the PI, and everybody's very in tune with each other.
Now, obviously, a lot of people were very concerned with you, leading up to your last fight in that weigh-ins. So what would you say that you learned from that moment that you could apply in this camp?
That one was particularly rough. And one of the main things with that one, there's a few things going on, but 2 cuts in 6 weeks is a little bit hard, even if your weight's fairly low. Yeah. I still made the weight, still made it, just didn't feel the greatest.
Were you kind of confused of the events that transpired afterwards about suspension, then being lifted?
I was not the only one. In the state of California, there's about 60 of us. I think I was just one of the ones with the bigger name, so they're kind of highlighting it to get their point across.
Now, looking at your opponent, Yana, have you been impressed with her so far? She's riding 2-fight win streak. What do you think about her?
She's doing well. Her last fight was against a good friend of mine.
There we go, guys. It also appears that the Strepsil overdose is affecting my memory now as well. I've got to turn the mute button off on my mic there. But there is Aspen Ladd talking about the weight cut, talking about how life has been since the weight cut, and she seems healthy, ready to go after making changes to her diet, lifestyle and training, which should make the weight cut on Saturday easier. But you guys know me, you know what I'm going to say. Assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups, and you can never trust what fighters say in interviews. We just have to wait and see how she looks at the weigh-ins on Friday before we could feel confident that she has possibly put her weight cutting issues behind her. So for me, this is a fight that Aspen Ladd should win. She's better than Kunitskaya everywhere, but her predictable style of fighting, her weight cutting issues mean that I don't want to bet her as a favourite. But at the same time, because Kunitskaya is second best everywhere, because she doesn't really have the boxing to make Ladd pay for being over-aggressive and not having the best striker defense, I'm not in love with a bet on Kunitskaya either. Again, I'm sorry to be boring, but I like money, and I don't think there are any strong positions on this fight, but it should be a good one for live betting. So again, hopefully you can use this information to make money in live betting. And now we go on to the next fight. Two more lovely ladies that we'll be talking about here. In this matchup, we are going to be discussing the fight between Cynthia Calvillo and Marina Rodriguez. Now, I said in the last breakdown that Aspen Ladd was one of the first names that jumped out at me, and Marina Rodriguez was possibly the first name that jumped out at me when I began researching this card. I actually couldn't believe that these girls were close to even money. We see the average odds available on Rodriguez right now at around about 1.77 for an implied, or minus 130 odds for an implied probability of 57%. Comparing that to Calvillo, who is currently around about a 2.10 underdog, slight underdog there, plus 110 for an implied probability of 48%. So we pop the odds back in on Rodriguez. Bookies currently leaning, seeing this as a 57 to kind of like 50 fight, slightly leaning in favour of Rodriguez with the way they've set the odds up. And I honestly couldn't believe that Rodriguez was close to even money, because from memory, she is very difficult to take down. Really good takedown defense, really good balance, strong core, and really high level striking, great Muay Thai striking. And, looking back on Calvillo's career from memory, so in my mind, Rodriguez would easily be able to keep this fight standing and box Calvillo's face off. Now, with this fight is an interesting one, guys, and I know a lot of you are betting this fight as well. With both these girls at even money, this is a fight a lot of you are interested in, and for me, it's impossible to predict how this fight's going to go. But it is very clear which scenarios could unfold. Does that make sense? This is one of those fights, like most fights, where we don't know exactly what will happen, but we can nail down exact scenarios which could play out. And there's about 2 or 3 which we could absolutely nail down and describe here based on the past performances of both these guys. Now, classic striker versus grappler matchup, and it's fair to say, Marina Rodriguez, crisp, technical, Brazilian national Muay Thai champion. If the fight stays standing, Calvillo's in big trouble. Rodriguez has great boxing, great kicks, very strong in the clinch. She can inflict significant damage in the clinch. Her knees are absolutely nasty. But Calvillo, total nightmare on the ground. Very slick submissions, very slick transitions. If this fight goes to the ground, it is going to be Calvillo's world. Rodriguez is going to struggle badly. And the interesting thing about this fight is both girls are both proficient at defending themselves in their opponent's strength and also weak at the same time. So what do I mean by that? Well, Rodriguez is going to be the easiest fighter to describe based on what I've just said. Rodriguez has got great balance, great takedown defense. She's very difficult to hold down. But if you do get her down, which is possible because her takedown defense is not completely bulletproof, if you can get Rodriguez down, she is very, very weak off her back. You know, remember, this is a Muay Thai Brazilian national champion in Muay Thai. Primarily a striker. She's only got a purple belt from a small regional gym in Brazil, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Purple belt in BJJ, small gym, right? On the ground, this is Calvillo's world. Rodriguez needs to treat the ground game like lava. If Rodriguez gets put on her back, there is a significant chance Calvillo will submit her. You know, in Rodriguez's fights against Randa Marcos in particular and against Jessica Aguilar, Rodriguez looked very, very weak off her back. Very weak indeed. Randa Marcos was passing her guard and controlling her from top position like Rodriguez had never even taken a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class in that first round. And it's fair to say Calvillo's ground game is light years ahead of Marcos's and Aguilar's. Calvillo is an absolute nightmare on the ground. But the problem with Calvillo is that she's fallen in love with her striking. And if you look on Calvillo's social media page, on her Instagram profile, we can see that she's gone to train at Tiger Muay Thai to develop her striking, which, could be a mistake. Because in my opinion, the one area where Calvillo really needs to improve is her wrestling. Because Calvillo has got such high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, she's so dangerous on the ground, but she lacks the offensive wrestling to get her opponents down. Her offensive wrestling is very weak. She struggles to take her opponents down. And for that reason, she doesn't really waste any energy on takedowns. It's almost like she's accepted that her wrestling isn't very good. For that reason, she doesn't shoot many takedowns, so she doesn't risk exerting energy on takedowns she knows she's not going to get because she doesn't have that explosive drive, that good offensive wrestling. So, Calvillo is primarily a grappler who's nasty on the ground, but she's more of an opportunistic grappler who just hopes that grappling exchanges come to her. And what's interesting about Calvillo is, if it were me, I would be thinking, focus on improving my wrestling, because I know if the fight goes to the ground, no matter who I'm up against in the division, I'm going to be able to cause them problems. Whereas Calvillo's gone the other way and she's thought, well, my wrestling's weak, I struggle to get girls to the ground, but if it goes to the ground, I'm good. So what I'm going to try and do is improve my striking, so if I can't get a fight to the ground, I might still be able to be competitive in a fight. Which is an interesting approach for a young, talented, very, very high-level fighter like Calvillo. But it is an approach which might get her into trouble against a much higher level striker than Rodriguez, because I don't really care what Calvillo's done at Tiger Muay Thai. I don't see her improving enough in a short space of time to be competitive with Rodriguez standing, because Rodriguez is just so good standing up. But Calvillo is an opportunistic grappler. She won't attempt takedowns, she won't threaten takedowns. She's happy to get into a friendly kickboxing match where she won't really engage too much. She will just stay on the outside and counter strike, and that will kind of lure her opponents into this kickboxing match. And then Calvillo will look for an opportunity to get the fight to the ground through unconventional methods, and one of the ways that she does this is catching kicks and turning them into takedowns, and she's very good at this. Very, very good at catching kicks. And that's interesting because, with Rodriguez being primarily a Muay Thai based fighter, she does throw a lot of kicks, a lot of push kicks, a lot of leg kicks, and it's very possible Calvillo could time one of them, take Rodriguez to the ground, get into top position and dominate, and quite likely get a submission win. So it's a fascinating fight. It is an absolutely fascinating fight. And if we look at the odds where, we do have Rodriguez as a slight favourite, and we do have Calvillo as a slight underdog, and we're trying to evaluate if there's any betting opportunities here, right? There's no fucking win. There's no win. There's no success. There's nothing to feel good about being the smartest guy in the bar. it's complete bullshit if you're like, oh, I think Cynthia Calvillo's going to win this weekend, and then when Calvillo wins, you brag all over Twitter and you think you're super smart. It's just a dumb way of looking at the sport, right? It's a very complex sport, and there are multiple ways this matchup could play out. You know, Calvillo gets her face boxed off for 3 rounds. She manages to get, you know, a takedown here and there, but Rodriguez manages to defend herself and work her way back to her feet, and ends up being a close matchup with some grappling. You know, Calvillo having some success with the grappling, Rodriguez picking her apart, standing. It's a close fight. Or maybe Calvillo does catch a good number of kicks and gets enough control time on the ground to dominate the fight, or even submit Rodriguez, right? These are multiple different ways that you know, the fight could play out. And really, there's no way to know which way this fight will play out, which is why this is a difficult matchup for betting, but again, a potentially great one for live betting. To summarise, whenever we're looking for a betting opportunity, we're trying to establish whether there's value on either fighter. So right now, the bookies are pretty much saying we don't know what's going to happen. You know, Rodriguez is a slight favourite, but both girls are pretty much at even money. And I agree with those odds. Because the way I look at this is, every round starts standing. Calvillo, if you think back to her fight against Courtney Casey, think back to her fight against Joanne Calderwood, she has shown a reluctance to get fights to the ground. She doesn't really shoot any takedowns. She hopes to catch a kick, but, you know, doesn't really try to go after that. It's just kind of an opportunistic thing. If it comes to her, it comes to her, right? Rodriguez has the takedown defense to completely shut Calvillo's wrestling down. She's got good balance, strong core. She's improving from fight to fight. And she's got the Muay Thai to completely pick Calvillo apart if the fight stays standing. So I agree with the odds, because the fight starts standing. Calvillo doesn't really have the wrestling to take Rodriguez down, but you can't bet Rodriguez because she does throw a lot of kicks, and Calvillo is good at catching kicks to turn them into takedowns, and Calvillo's a nightmare on the ground. So I don't want to bet Rodriguez because she's in big trouble if this fight goes to the ground, and Calvillo could possibly get it there. But I don't want to bet Calvillo either because she's not particularly effective at getting fights to the ground, and the Courtney Casey and Joanne Calderwood fight show that. So it's a shitty fight for betting, really, but a good fight for live betting. A good high-level chess match of a fight for fans. A really interesting high-level technique. Classic striker versus grappler matchup. Calvillo, an excellent grappler with deficiencies in striking. Rodriguez, an excellent striker with deficiencies in grappling. Fascinated to see how this will play out. I don't know how it will play out, but I have very strong reads on possible scenarios, and I'm hoping I'll be able to use that information to make money in live betting. So again, guys, sorry to be boring. I am going to pass on this fight. I'm very, very sorry to be boring, but again, I just care about making money. And if you bet this fight, you are putting your money in a lot of danger. Run a mile from anyone that tells you they feel confident on either of these girls, because there is no way you can feel confident on either of these girls. This is a coin flip fight, if ever I've seen one. And yes, maybe, if you're super loose with your with your risk tolerance, you might want to throw a little bit of money on Calvillo as a slight underdog and get a slight tiny little bit of value. But it's not for me. I need stronger positions to put my money than that. Just discovered another side effect from overdosing on Strepsils. Right side of my cheek's gone numb, so that's interesting. But fuck it. Only 1, 2, 3 fights left to go. And if you're still watching, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this video. I'm sorry it's very long, but we got tons of fights to go through, right? And these fights are very interesting. They're very complex, deep fights. So if you're watching, I love you, man. I really appreciate you watching this, because I know that this long form, really detailed content isn't for everyone. So I appreciate your support. I really do. Next fight. Thiago Alves versus Tim Means. Now, all week I have been hunting for a parlay partner. I wouldn't say all week. I'd actually say for the last 3 weeks I've been hunting for a parlay partner for Makhmud Muradov. So if you've watched the video that I put out a while ago on my channel, this fight here, the Muradov versus Smith live research video, I said in that video that, I believe Muradov's going to absolutely dominate Trevor Smith this weekend. But of course, his odds reflect that. He's a big favourite. But even as a big favourite, I felt there was a little bit of value in his odds. So I was looking for a parlay partner instead of having to bet him straight. And I was hoping Tim Means would be one of those guys that I would be able to parlay with Muradov. Because to be honest with you, Tim Means is absolutely amazing. I love researching Tim Means' fights. He is a pleasure to watch. He really is one of the best fighters in the welterweight division. And I know all the wiki cappers or guys that only pay attention to results will be ready to hammer their keyboards and leave me a nasty comment and tell me that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But fuck those guys, because they don't understand the sport. Tim Means, skill for skill, is one of the best fighters in the welterweight division. If Tim Means fought smarter, I think he'd be top 5, no problem. Tim Means could even be a potential future champion, because he's got he's got pretty much every attribute that you would want in a champion. So he's got a granite chin, and again, I could already hear the chatter of keyboards for people telling me that Means is chinny because he got knocked out by Nico Price in his last fight. But a little bit of a history lesson for you. Tim Means has had over 40, he's had 40 pro fights, and in those 40 pro fights, if we take a look through his record, guys, you can see that he has only been knocked out one time in 40 pro fights, and that was his last fight against Nico Price, in a fight that he was absolutely dominating. He was annihilating Price in the striking and ragdolling Nico Price around on the ground like a child. This was utter domination. Like I say, Tim Means has got a granite chin, only been KO'd one time in 40 pro fights. That was his last fight against Nico Price, a fight he was dominating. He's got cardio for days, incredibly tough, very difficult to take down, very strong wrestler, high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and, of course, his striking is completely devastating. Tim Means is a total package. What more could you want from a fighter? Skill for skill, he's amazing. But for whatever reason, and I can't put my finger on the reason why this happens, but he just finds ways to make fights difficult for himself. And what's quite interesting is, you think of fighters who do make life difficult for themselves. So you think of, for example, Ben Rothwell, who's a strong wrestler with a high-level ground game, and he just doesn't shoot takedowns. You think, fucking hell, Ben, when you're fighting these guys like Alves and Struve, just try and take them down, man, and you'll have many more wins, much more success in your career. You want to shake them. And there's this one thing you get these fighters that do. The one thing fighters could do to change, to fight smarter, to implement, which would transform their career and give them loads more success, and they don't do it, and you want to shake them, it's so frustrating. What's interesting about Tim Means is he doesn't have any single weakness which results in him losing fights that he should win. He just makes different kinds of mistakes. So, for example, he was destroying Nico Price, and got overly aggressive and walked right onto a big right hand. But he let Nico Price get back up. Tim Means was absolutely dominating Nico Price on the ground. He was very close to finishing Price on the ground, and he let him stand back up. If Means would have just kept Price on the ground, beat him up from top position, he would have got a finish ground and pound easily. But he let the wolf in the chicken coop, let Price up, wanted to make a statement, and got flash KO'd. So being overly aggressive cost him in the Nico Price fight. But then when you go back and watch his fights against Sergio Moraes, I know the decision against Sergio Moraes was bad, but it was, still a mistake that Means made to make the fight closer than it needed to be. In fact, in his last 3 fights against, not last 3 fights, but in these 3 fights against Sergio Moraes, Belal Muhammad, Alex Garcia, Tim Means was incredibly passive in these 3 fights. Even in his win over Alex Garcia, and he should have beaten Sergio Moraes. It was a hometown decision in Brazil. But these fights were closer than they needed to be. I mean, we saw how bad Sergio Moraes looked a few weeks ago against James Krause. A guy like Tim Means should have blown him out the water, but he fought passively, didn't put his stamp on rounds and gave the judges an opportunity to rob him. Belal Muhammad's got nothing for Tim Means from a technical point of view. Tim Means significantly better striker, significantly better grappler than Muhammad, and yet again Means struggled to put his stamp on rounds. It ended up being a close split decision. And again, similar story with the Alex Garcia fight. I know Means won a unanimous decision, but he was just lucky to have good judges on the night, because again, he failed to put his stamp on rounds. And yeah, did win a decision, but it was visibly close, the type of fight that he could get robbed in, the type of fight that could end in a split decision. And then you look at his losses or his no contest against Alex Oliveira, where he fouled his opponent, he kneed a downed opponent. I mean, these are mistakes that fighters with 40 pro fights or 35 pro fights should not be making. And against Alex Oliveira again, he was dominating in this fight, and actually broke his foot and ended up, momentum swinging Oliveira's way after he broke his foot. But Means was doing very well in this fight. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, Tim Means is significantly better than Thiago Alves everywhere, but for whatever reason, it's tough to trust Tim Means, because remember at the beginning of the video where I was talking about Song, and I was saying in this kind of odds range, a fighter needs to tick every box, and Song doesn't because of his takedown defense and ground game. Now the crazy thing is, Tim Means is in the same sort of odds range. Remember, every odds range you can have a different level of risk tolerance. The better the odds, the more risk you could take on. Where Tim Means, we look at his current average odds are around about 1.40, which is minus 250 for an implied probability of 71%. You want to be capping Means at having around about 75%. You want to be giving him around about a 75% chance of winning to be able to get any value here, which is an enormous probability to give a fighter in a cage fight. But Means is significantly better than Thiago Alves everywhere. I mean, if we think about Alves' biggest weakness throughout his career, it has been his takedown defense and grappling. We saw a really low-level grappler in Max Griffin take him down and cause him big issues. I mean, again, this was split decision robbery. Griffin should have won, hometown decision in Brazil. But, we also saw Carlos Condit take down Thiago Alves and dominate him on the ground. Now, Thiago Alves is a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but weak wrestlers like Carlos Condit and Griffin have been able to cause him big problems in grappling exchanges. So if Tim Means wanted to, he could take Alves down and completely dominate this fight, win probably 30-25 and cruise to an easy decision, maybe even get a submission or a stoppage for ground and pound. But he won't. He's like Ben Rothwell. He's reluctant to, do what needs to be done to get an easy win. He's one of those frustrating guys. So even though Means does have a huge advantage when it comes to grappling, it probably won't mean anything. And standing, Alves, similar to Kunitskaya, Alves not the best boxer. Most of his striking is centered around his kicks. And Means is an incredible boxer, and that the best counter to a kick is a punch in the face. So Means also has a huge advantage striking. And we've also seen Alves start to slow down a little bit in some of his fights over the last couple of years, particularly his fight against Max Griffin, where he slowed down a lot after having his takedown defense and wrestling tested. So yeah, it's one of those fights where Means is better everywhere, but he's a tough guy to trust. And for me, when you think about Thiago Alves, what is the one thing that Thiago Alves does well? Well, the one thing Thiago Alves does well is leg kicks. His leg kicks are absolutely vicious. Great footwork. He does a great job of setting them up. And that could be a significant factor in this fight, because Means has a bit of a history with foot and leg injuries. We go to his Instagram profile. We can see here Tim Means showing the broken ankle that he suffered in his last fight against Nico Price. So when Nico Price landed the right hand, Tim Means actually broke his ankle on the way down because he got folded so hard off the punch. This was a vicious broken ankle injury that Tim Means suffered. Here he shows, Nico Price after landing the shot. Here we can see the ankle break there as Means hits the ground. And there we can see, the aftermath, the surgery that he had to have to heal the ankle. There's some staples, there's some stitches there. Absolutely nasty. And then the other thing that I want to show you is, like I mentioned a few moments ago, Tim Means did break his foot or fracture his foot or something like that in his 2017 fight against Alex Oliveira. Again, similar to the Nico Price fight, Means was doing very well in this fight. Wasn't as dominant as he was against Price, but he was cruising to a win, and broke his foot and had to look for a way out in round 2 because he was hurt so bad. Here you see he went into the Oliveira fight hurt. He had a bone bruise, and then that turned into a broken foot in the fight. So guess what I try to say is, look, Means is significantly better than Thiago Alves everywhere. But in order to bet a guy at an implied probability of 71%, they've got to tick every box. And from a skill perspective, Means absolutely does. But I'm not sure he does from a decision making, from a fight IQ perspective. Because realistically, Means should be on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fight winning streak. He should have beaten all these guys. But as it happens, he is 1, 2, 3, 4. He is 4, 1, and 4 in his last 9 fights, when he could easily be 9-0. I mean, you could even make a strong argument that he should have beaten Matt Brown. Again, he had Matt Brown hurt bad. He was doing very well in this fight, but got overly aggressive and was finished. So he could quite easily be on a ridiculous... Sorry, guys. Throat's getting pretty bad, but Means could quite easily be on a 15-fight win streak here, a 14-fight win streak or something. He's that good. Should have beaten pretty much all these guys, but his fight IQ has let him down. His decision making has let him down. And one tiny little detail to pay attention to, where you're looking at, Means fighting with a broken foot. He said the broken foot developed in the Oliveira fight because he went into it injured with a bruised bone. That shows that Means has got a willingness to fight injured, which is a big concern. That's a red flag. Maybe he's coming into this fight on Saturday night against Alves injured. And we know Alves is an absolute warrior who will bite down on his mouthpiece, who will come out swinging. And also, Tim Means, you look at the scar that I showed you from his Instagram profile, that's a real nasty scar. And that injury, that surgery, I've got rid of it just a little bit prematurely, but if we look at the date on that picture, it's gone. Never mind. I'll just power through this. So I can tell you that Tim Means had that surgery in July, which is only 5 months ago. So who knows if that ankle's fully healed, because that once a fighter breaks their hand or breaks a bone, it becomes much easier to break it again. It becomes a vulnerability. It's like dislocating a shoulder. Once you dislocate it for the first time, much easier to dislocate it in the future. It becomes a recurring chronic injury. And, if Thiago Alves starts blasting that broken ankle with inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks, his devastating leg kicks, who knows how Tim Means' ankle's going to hold up. So, Means should win easily. He's better than Alves everywhere, but Alves' leg kicks could be an issue. Tim Means' fight IQ might cost him. We know MMA judges are really bad, and we know Means has a tendency at times to put in passive performances. I don't want to bet a guy at extremely steep odds that carries an implied probability of 71% unless they tick every box, and Tim Means doesn't tick every box. By the same token, I don't want to bet Thiago Alves is a big underdog, because if Means shows up and fights to his full potential, he will murder Alves. There's no doubt about it. So again, sorry to be boring, guys, but I'm just not finding a lot of bets I love on this card, and I like money. I really like money, and there's some solid betting opportunities coming up this month. So, yeah, save your money for those. We now go on to the next fight that I want to talk about in today's video, which is going to be Joe Solecki against Matt Wiman. And with Solecki being a big favourite, with Matt Wiman... Sorry, guys, I need the straps on my throat. It's fucked, in quite a lot of pain here. Sorry about this, guys. I'm now doing a whole packet of Strepsils. I think this will be my 5th on this video. So if I'm going to overdose, it's probably going to happen now. We will see. Anyway, Solecki, potential parlay partner for with Muradov. Because let's be real, Matt Wiman is a warrior. He's an absolute tough beast of a motherfucker. But didn't look good in his return from a long layoff against Luis Pena. And if I'm being very honest, if you go back and watch his fights against, Mac Danzig, Isaac Valley Flag, TJ Grant, didn't look good in his first stint in the UFC either. Or I guess his total stint, because he never actually left, even though there was a 5-year gap. But if you go back and watch Wiman in his fight against Isaac Valley Flag, not great. And of course, he got dominated by Luis Pena. So, to me, Matt Wiman's looking like a fighter who could have had a bit of success, back in the day where the level of talent in the UFC wasn't as high as it is now. But the sport has moved on. The sport has evolved a lot since 2014. And I find it very difficult to see Matt Wiman competing and hanging with the guys in the UFC in 2019. Which is a shame. Now, obviously, the Pena fight doesn't tell us a lot because Pena is amazing. He's a hell of a lot better than Joe Solecki. And also, Wiman was probably dealing with a large amount of ring rust, coming back after 5 years off, and he took tons of damage in that Pena fight in the first round. He didn't really have a lot of time to settle in, so we couldn't really see if Wiman's improved or anything over the last 5 years. But at 36 years old, it's unlikely. You know what they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, especially in the lighter weight classes. It's unlikely Wiman will show up and perform any better than he looked against Isaac Valley Flag. So I'm not expecting much from Matt Wiman this weekend. And that is one of the reasons why Solecki jumped out at me as a potential parlay partner with Muradov. So let's talk about this fight in every single area it could take place. So Solecki is primarily a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. And that is a significant detail to pay attention to here, because so is Matt Wiman. Matt Wiman's weaknesses have always been his wrestling, always been his takedown defense, always been his striking defense. But Solecki doesn't really pose too much of a risk to him in those areas, because Solecki's not a very good wrestler either, and not particularly dangerous with his hands. I would say Solecki is the better striker, but that's purely because he's younger, faster, more athletic. But Wiman may be able to negate that technical advantage, that athletic advantage, through sheer toughness and determination, because we know Wiman's an absolute warrior that will just keep bringing it for 15 minutes or until you shut his lights off. But this fight gets interesting because if we look at the odds, Wiman is currently around about a 3.80 underdog, which is plus 280 for an implied probability of 26%. So to get any value on Wiman here, you want to be capping him at around about 35%, which for me is tricky because he hasn't looked good at all. Really has not looked good, even back to, his fight in 2014 against Isaac Valley Flag. If we look at, Solecki's odds, currently around about a 1.30 favourite. That is minus 333 odds, which carry an implied probability of 77%. So to get any value on Solecki here, you've got to cap him over 80%. And, bearing in mind, this is a guy making his UFC debut against a tough guy like Matt Wiman. Matt Wiman, from a skill point of view, is not great, but he's a tough mamma jammer. And he is an absolute warrior that is more than prepared to get sucked into a dogfight. And we haven't seen how Solecki reacts to being put in bad positions. If Wiman does turn this into a dogfight, if he cuts Solecki bad, if he puts him in a bad position on the ground, if he takes his back, how is Solecki going to deal with that? Does he have the mentality to deal with that? At this stage in his career, we don't know. He's very young at 26. He's very inexperienced. Hasn't fought the best level of opponent. And this fight's this fight's interesting because both these guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. So Wiman's an easy fight if you expose his takedown offense and you expose his striking. But if you choose to mix it up with him on the ground, you take the fight to the one area where he feels most confident. He's more than happy to get into a BJJ match in the ground. And that's where I think Solecki could get into a little bit of trouble here, because he does have a decent level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But because he is a pure BJJ based fighter, he doesn't have the grappling awareness of how to translate his BJJ into MMA grappling. He doesn't have that at all. And what I mean by that is Solecki's not a guy that understands the importance of top position, not a guy that understands the importance of finishing rounds strong, finishing rounds in dominant positions. If you go back and watch Solecki's fights, and I'm gutted that I can't show you evidence of this because pretty much all of his recent fights are copyright protected on Fight Pass, but they are all on Fight Pass. You go back and watch him, you'll see that Solecki will frequently jump on submissions, frequently get overly aggressive, try to take his opponent's back. And when he does that, he quite often puts himself in a worse position. He quite often gives that position and ends up on the bottom. And that isn't smart in MMA. It's not smart in the UFC. 9 times out of 10, the fighter in top position is the fighter that wins the round. And the judges don't care if you are dominating your opponent on the ground, but you are not getting anywhere. So 2 minutes before the end of the round, you decide to jump for an armbar or jump to try or bait your opponent into giving their back up, and you try and take their back and it doesn't work out and you end up on the bottom, and you spend the final minute on your back with your opponent on top of the round. Judges don't care that you were dominating the grappler exchanges and that you simply went for the sub or tried to advance position because you weren't getting anything else and you wanted to try and be the aggressor in the fight. They don't care about that. If you end the round on your back with your opponent raining down ground and pound, there's a good chance you will lose the round. And Solecki's the kind of guy that will fall into that trap. He doesn't have good MMA grappling fight IQ yet, and that could cost him, because Matt Wiman, base in BJJ, crafty, experienced veteran with over 20 pro fights, I feel he might outfox Solecki. Money has been coming in on Solecki, ever since the odds were first released. Here we can see first come out at a 1.56 favourite. He's been bet down ever since then. And I feel like, along with Jandiroba, these kind of bets are risky. I feel like Wiman might be the parlay killer this weekend. Like I say, not very good. Huge holes. But I'm not sure if Solecki necessarily has the skills to exploit them. And I feel Solecki is a little bit naive on the ground, and that could get him into trouble. Gives up position way too much and really gets overly aggressive trying to take his opponent's back, and quite often gets too high up on their back and ends up on the bottom. So you guys know what I'm going to say. Look, hate to be boring, I like money. There's no strong opportunities to bet this fight. Wiman isn't very good. I'm not going to bet him, but I'm not going to bet Solecki as a huge favourite either, because he makes mistakes that could cost him against an experienced veteran like Wiman. So we now go into the final fight that I want to talk about in today's video. Thank God, before I overdose on Strepsils. We're going to talk about the main event, the Demolition Man, Alistair Overeem, with almost 60 pro fights. Has he got 60 pro fights? He might have. My brain stopped working after talking for 3 hours. Yeah, 62 pro fights. Fuck me. That is a lot of fights. Fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik on the opposite end of the spectrum at 9-0. Now, lately, we have seen a lot of one-dimensional fighters exposed. We saw Crone Gracie exposed because we had a nice bet on Cub Swanson. We saw Michelle Pereira exposed. And we also saw Johnny Walker exposed. All these guys very, very one-dimensional. And in the breakdown videos we've been pumping out over the last few months, you guys know me, I called it on all three of these guys. I said Gracie was too one-dimensional. I said Pereira was one-dimensional. Walker was too one-dimensional. And I've said the same about Rozenstruik. If you go back and watch my breakdown, my live research breakdown videos on his fights against Arlovski and Crowder, you'll see that I put Rozenstruik in the same box as guys like Walker, guys like Crone Gracie, guys like Michelle Pereira, where they're too specialist in one area that their holes in other areas are so big that they're going to find it very difficult to forge a career at the highest level of MMA, just because as they start to face a higher level of opponent, they're going to get exposed. And I would put Jairzinho Rozenstruik in that box, because while he is a very technical, very high-level kickboxer, his takedown defense, well, he doesn't have any, and his ground game, he doesn't have any. So, obviously, if a fight stays standing, Rozenstruik's a nightmare, but on the ground, he is not even white belt level. So, that makes this an interesting fight, because in any other division, when you have a fighter with no takedown defense and no ground game like Rozenstruik, they basically have no hope of beating hardly anyone in the UFC, because almost everyone, when they reach UFC level, has some level of ability to take their opponents down, and it really doesn't take much to take Rozenstruik down. His takedown defense in the Albini fight looked awful, and you know me, I don't like to work in opinions, I like to work in facts. So don't worry, I'm going to be showing you some evidence of this in a little bit in one of Rozenstruik's past fights. But the heavyweight division's unique because there aren't a lot of strong wrestlers at the top of the heavyweight division. And guys in the heavyweight division tend to be quite slow, not as athletic. And when you carry as much knockout power as Rozenstruik does, you can rack up wins just by catching guys before they have a chance to tie you up and take you down. And that's what makes this a compelling fight. So while Rozenstruik is in the same box as Kron Gracie and Johnny Walker and Michel Pereira, Rozenstruik might have a lot more success than those guys and be able to get away with his limitations, simply because the division he fights in means the level of opponent that he is fighting won't as often have the skills to exploit his weakness, and he also has nuclear missiles in his hands to KO them before they get near him. And that's what makes this an interesting fight, because, you know, the Overeem of, say, 3-4 years ago would have used his jab, the fight long, stayed on the outside, waited for his moment of opportunity to double leg Rozenstruik, put him on his back, dominate on the ground, get a win by ground and pound nice and easy. But I'm not sure the Overeem in 2019 is capable of that. But we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute. The first thing that I want to do is just address Rozenstruik's takedown defense and ground game, because I know a lot of people have been betting Rozenstruik, and you might be about to leave a nasty comment saying, oh, you know, Overeem won't take him down, Rozenstruik's takedown defense not that bad, blah, 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 all this shit. I like to deal in facts, not opinions. So let's take a look at one of Rozenstruik's recent fight, or not recent fights. It's from back in 2018, May 2018. This fight is from May 2018 against Andrei Kovalev at Rising 10. Let us take a look at this. So, this is Rozenstruik, and in this fight you're going to see a little bit of his takedown defense and ground game tested. If you want to see more, I recommend going and checking out his UFC debut against Junior Albini, where Albini was easily able to take him down and dominate him on the ground. And while we're watching this, I will also actually make the point that I don't actually think Rozenstruik is that powerful. He's quite small for a heavyweight. And before you guys again hammer the comments and leave me a nasty comment and say, oh, how the fuck can you say this guy doesn't have power in his hands? He's a vicious KO artist. I'm not disagreeing with you. He does have power, but I think his power is overstated. I think Rozenstruik is just incredibly fast. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, Kovalev here ate a load of shots from Rozenstruik and went the distance. Albini ate a lot of bombs from Rozenstruik and hung in there. And they say that the shots that KO you are the ones that you don't see coming. And I think that's what makes Rozenstruik so dangerous. He's so fast that when he lets his hands go, just catches his opponent cold and they don't see the shots coming. That's where he gets the KOs. But I don't necessarily think he's got devastating power like a Francis Ngannou. I just think he's deceptively quick, fast hands, and he catches guys when they're not expecting it, because you very rarely see a guy this fast in the heavyweight division. And one of the reasons why he's so fast is, like I say, because he's on the smaller side for a heavyweight. But, we all know what he's capable of doing striking. So let's skip ahead a little bit to see his takedown defense tested, so this video doesn't become super duper long. And of course, if you do want to watch this fight in full, it is available on YouTube. But we just skip through this first round. You can see Kovalev quite happy to stand with Rozenstruik. Not really in any danger. Eats a lot of clean hard shots from Rozenstruik, but his chin holds up. And like I say, that's because Rozenstruik doesn't carry too much power in his hands, but he's just very fast. Catches people off guard. And that entire first round pretty much contested standing. So this is into the second round now. We start to see a little bit of Rozenstruik's takedown defense tested. So 3.5 minutes to go in this second round. We see Kovalev shoot a double leg takedown and easily put Rozenstruik on his back. Now, in Rozenstruik's defense, it's more difficult to defend a takedown in a ring than in a cage, but Kovalev hit that takedown very easily and moved into side control no problem. And the most alarming thing about this fight for me is that Rozenstruik just very weak off his back. Showed absolutely no ability to get back to his feet at all. Just looked very, very weak off his back indeed. And he showed the same weaknesses in his UFC debut against Junior Albini. So I find it quite funny that, Alistair Overeem is, one of the most decorated strikers to ever compete in the UFC. Former K1 Grand Prix champion. And we're all talking about this fight like if it stays standing, he's got no chance of winning. But the reality is, Overeem can't take a shot like he used to. And Rozenstruik is very dangerous standing. If the fight stays standing, Overeem's probably going to be in trouble. He's going to need to get this fight to the ground. Now, Overeem, despite being primarily a striker, is a very strong grappler. Very good offensive wrestling. And he's devastating on the ground. Decent submissions, vicious ground and pound. If Overeem gets on top of Rozenstruik, it's probably going to be over. But the thing about Overeem is, over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, if you go back and watch his, all his fights over the last 2-3 years, you'll see that when he does try and take his opponents up or shoot a takedown, they almost always come from the clinch, or he shoots high above his opponent's hips. And the problem with that is, you've got to put yourself in a range to be hit by Rozenstruik in order to get into those positions to time up and take him down. And if Overeem was going to shoot powerful blast double legs, then I don't think Rozenstruik would be able to react fast enough to catch Overeem as he's coming in. And Overeem has had that in his locker a long time ago. We have seen him use those blast double legs. Just hasn't used them in a while. If he brings them out for this fight, Rozenstruik is screwed. Because if Overeem gets Rozenstruik down with 2 or 3 minutes to work, he's going to get a finish. You can see here, Rozenstruik just cannot defend himself on the ground. He's white belt level on his back and no takedown defense. So Overeem in the past, talking 4, 5, 6 years ago, has shown the skills to double leg Rozenstruik, put him on his back, dominate from top position. But over the last 2 or 3 years, Overeem's become a lot stiffer. Takedown entries have come above hip height or from the clinch, which means he'd have to get into boxing range where Rozenstruik can catch him with a bomb. And I think it goes without saying that Overeem doesn't want to be in bombs from Rozenstruik. Overeem is a little bit chinny at this stage in his career. It's understandable. He's 39 years old. He's had over 60 pro fights, and he has been KO'd a bunch of times. KO'd against Curtis Blades, KO'd against Francis Ngannou's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You know, Overeem's been KO'd 11 times that we know of. Never mind his fights in K1 and kickboxing, yeah? No wonder his chin's not where it used to be. So if it stays standing with how fast Rozenstruik is, with how explosive, you'd have to guess that if Rozenstruik just lands one clean, hard bomb, he's going to put Overeem away. There's no doubt about it. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Overeem gets the fight to the ground, which he can, Rozenstruik's completely screwed. And that's just pretty much what I wanted to show you there. You can watch the full fight on YouTube. I mean, Kovalev gasses out in the third round and doesn't look very good, but doesn't really tell us much. And in terms of how much Rozenstruik's likely to have improved his takedown defense since that fight, I don't think he will have improved it that much at all. So that fight took place about 18 months ago. But since then, we saw him in his UFC debut against Albini in February of this year, which was only 10 months ago. And his takedown defense looked non-existent. His ground game, non-existent. No ground game, no takedown defense against Albini at all. He was getting dominated. And if you look at Rozenstruik's social media profile, just seems to travel around a lot, training lots of different gyms. Wrestling doesn't appear to be a priority for him with the gyms that he's going to, with the training partners that he is training with. So I don't really think Rozenstruik will have improved that much. Certainly not to the point where he'd be able to shut down the offensive wrestling of Overeem if Overeem really does come out and start shooting the kind of double legs we've seen him do in the past. So, to summarise, this fight is an absolute bastard for betting. Similar in many ways to the Calvillo versus Rodriguez fight, where, you know, you look at it, bookies have got both these guys at around about even money, and classic striker versus grappler matchup, which is ironic because it isn't, because Overeem's actually a more decorated striker than Rozenstruik, but let's not go into that. You guys know what I'm trying to say. Overeem needs to get this fight to the ground to win. I think if it stays standing, Rozenstruik's going to put him away. But on the ground, it's undeniable that Overeem has a giant advantage. And some people will say, well, you know, Overeem, when he grapples, tends to gas very hard. So as long as Rozenstruik could survive round one, from there it won't matter. And I would agree with you, but Rozenstruik is so weak off his back that I just see Overeem getting a finish on the ground if he just hits one takedown and has a couple minutes to work. So I don't think Overeem's going to need to grind Rozenstruik out here. I think Rozenstruik's so bad on the ground that Overeem will get a finish quite easily if it hits the ground. So this fight's a horrible one for betting. And I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of people are betting this fight. I know a lot of people are betting Rozenstruik. You know, money's coming on Rozenstruik. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but I feel like if you are betting this fight, you may as well just go to a casino and bet on red or black on the roulette table, because both guys have got big weaknesses in the area where their opponent excels. So, you know, Overeem, a bit chinny in this stage of his career, and Rozenstruik very fast, very dangerous standing. But at the same time, Rozenstruik's got no takedown defense and ground game. We know Overeem, strong wrestler, high-level grappler. So why would you want to bet this fight? It just makes no sense to me. If you're asking me to lean either way, I use my same logic as I did for the Calvillo versus Rodriguez fight, and I do lean towards Rozenstruik because, you know, the fight stays standing, or the fight starts standing, every round starts standing, and Overeem will have to get close to Rozenstruik to get the takedown. But, you know, for that reason, I think it's more likely Rozenstruik lands a kill shot and knocks him out. But at even money, there's no good deals on this fight. Why would you want to bet this fight? If you bet this fight, you're putting your money in a lot of danger and taking a big gamble. So I definitely wouldn't recommend betting this one. Although, yeah, no props there. Fight doesn't go to decision. Bookies have obviously got that one sewn up. And the over is really risky as well. I could see... actually, is it? Is it? I actually don't mind the under, you know. I actually don't mind the under. The only way the under... the only reason why I don't like the under would be if Overeem comes out like he did against Arlovsky, looking to conserve energy, super tactical, and looks to just stay on the outside and point fight, like he did against Fabrizio Verdum in his last fight, like he did against Arlovsky, where, you know, Alistair Overeem really passive, doesn't engage, just stays on the outside, barely anything happens, and they exchange like 5 strikes around because Rozenstruik, biggest fight of his career, big main event, he gets a bit starstruck and he starts slower and gets sucked into like a passive, tentative fight. Maybe similar to the Francis Ngannou-Derek Lewis fight, where both guys are so afraid of each other's strengths that neither guy really does anything. I think that's one way that the under could lose, but I do think an early finish is pretty likely. Yeah, you know, look guys, right, I know it's a long video. We talked about a lot of fights. There's no strong betting opportunities that I like, but this is the reality of my life, man. This is a reality of my job. You know, I sit here 6 days a week watching fights from early morning to late at night. That's what I do for a living. And unfortunately, the bookies are big multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies that want to bait you into making bad betting decisions. And if I'm being real, I think the bookies have pretty much nailed this card. You know, very, very accurate odds across the board. I'm not seeing many opportunities, and that's the way it's going to go. That is the way it's going to go. The bookies want you to make bad betting decisions. They want you to assume that Song has improved his takedown defense at Team Alpha Male, and they want you to take a gamble on him at huge favorite odds where you're in a minus EV position. You know, they want you to bet on Marina Rodriguez because you don't think Calvillo can get her down. You know, they want you to bet on Rozenstruik because, you know, you think Overeem's past it and Rozenstruik will knock him out. You know, there's loads of examples. They want you to do these things. They want you to bet Tim Means as a big favourite, and then, you know, he goes out and fights super passive and loses a split decision. They want you to make these mistakes. Just don't fall into the trap. Pass. Wait for the stronger opportunities to come up. They will come up. They always do. And at the end of the day, you know, I always say this is not about being the smartest guy in the bar. This is about making money. And if you've got the pass, you got the pass. There's nothing you can do about it. So with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this long video. That is going to be it for today. I will be back next week with content for UFC 245 Holloway versus Volkanovski. And if you like this video, please show some appreciation by hitting the like button, subscribing, and leaving a comment below. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend. I hope you crush it on Saturday night and make tons of money. Love you all, and thanks for watching.